project and move it on to the Planning Commission and or the City Council, incorporating the recommendations of the Planning Commission for the sidewalk pathway, as well as a recommendation for the applicant to look at providing additional bike parking.
And also to look at what bike paths are near the project.
Sure, if you want to have that in the motion, we can add that in there too.
And you guys had asked me to just double check with Fair and Pierce in terms of the 2 daily trips, and to also verify what the EV requirements are from the building department.
Yeah, these are not conditional. These are more informational items.
Yeah.
Okay. Any comments on the motion? Anyone wishes to amend it? Commissioner Venkatraman, go ahead.
Yeah, I just had a question on whether this is not a question, I guess, a verification on whether this property is subject to the new REACH codes, specific to the EV charging facilities needed. I'd like to add that to the motion.
Okay. Any objections to that or any amendments to that amendment or proposed amendments?
So we can add that to the motion. Guido already had it on his to-do list, but we can add to the motion that staff will check the EV charging requirements. I'm going to say both that the city has and that the state has. Any required governmental EV charging requirements that are required before this project is approved, or whatever construction deadline, whatever deadlines those guidelines provide, because I know there's changes that come down sometimes.
Absolutely.
Are you okay with that?
Absolutely, and I will follow up with building. So.
Okay.
Can someone rephrase the proposed motion, because I've gotten lost now.
Yeah.
So
okay, can we rephrase that? Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, I'll give it a try. So I move to approve this project and move it forward to the Planning Commission and or the City Council, kind of its next destination, with accepting the recommendation of the Planning Commission to add that sidewalk / pathway, number 1. Number 2, with recommending to the applicant to add additional secure bike parking, and with a recommendation to check the required guidelines for EV charging. And maybe I'll just add a recommendation from us to request the applicant to consider EV charging, even if it's not required.
I second that motion.
Very well. We have a motion with a second. All in favor, raise your hand, please. Okay.
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, Tom? All right, I see. Are you okay? All right, looks like Steve? Aye?
Aye.
Okay, so we have a 7 yes. Very well. Guido?
And thank you, Guido, for checking on those other things. I know we didn't have everything in the motion, but you have good notes, so thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, and then next month I will be bringing a 50-unit project that's in a pre-application stage. If hopefully I can get early on in the agenda so I can spend time with my kids, but I'll bribe Jaime for that. It is a pre-application project, so we're looking to get more comments, because that obviously has more road impacts. So I look forward to seeing you guys next month. So
Yeah, and Guido, I think for next one, I would encourage you to make sure that the applicant and you bring forth as much information as possible.
Absolutely.
For our review.
Absolutely.
And the consultants, Guido, yeah, for the next bigger one, make sure the transportation consultants are there to answer questions.
Yeah.
So this is a SB 330. I'm not allowed to actually ask for some stuff at this stage. This is the pre-app part of SB 330. In the formal app, when it comes in 180 days, absolutely. But we'll have a more robust presentation.
And in that case, I would even encourage you to educate this commission onto some of the attributes of SB 330 that are relevant for us when you bring the project for final approval.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Great. Thank you, Guido.
Guys.
Great. So We now move to item 3, Almond Avenue cycle track buffer zone elements. Jaime.
Chair, maybe I just missed it. I apologize. Did we skip over item 2 or?
No, we swapped 2 and 4.
Oh, I see. Okay. All right then.
Yeah.
Gakko, you want to do me a favor? I don't want to crash again. Can you pull up that slideshow for item 2? For Almond Avenue, that is?
Wait, item 2 or 3?
3, Almond Avenue. I think I sent that to you earlier this afternoon. It's a short.
Sorry, guys, we scrambled the order for you, but I think you manage.
Let me know if you can't find it, Gaku. Great. Thank you. Okay, Chair. Thank you. So tonight we're going to be talking about Almond Avenue. This is actually going to be potentially your last opportunity to talk about this specific project before construction starts sometime in the next several weeks. And next slide, please. As a quick reminder, we've talked about Almond Avenue several times over the past year, starting with the roadway resurfacing project the city was planning for over the summer that just passed. And we built in phase 1 as part of the resurfacing program a setup to build a future cycle track, two-way cycle track along the north side of Almond between San Antonio and roughly Gordon Way along the frontage of Los Altos High School. Phase 2 is actually in a bidding phase. We just received bids from contractors to actually finish striping in the cycle track along with some other work on Covington. And we're in the process of finalizing bids for the traffic signal modification work that would accompany this that we spoke about last month. Tonight, we're specifically bringing this back because at last month's meeting, there was a little bit of discussion about wanting to understand what was proposed for placement within the buffer zone space between the vehicle lanes and the two-way cycle track to help provide some type of a vertical element protection between bicyclists and the two-way cycle track and vehicles traveling west on Almond towards San Antonio. Next slide, please. And this is actually my last slide. This is the signage district plan that is we just received bids for, and what we're proposing is what's called a K71 flexible post marker. You may be familiar with these types of what I'm going to call flexible post or plastic bollards that you see them very commonly in urbanized environments where people are trying to provide some vertical element to separate bike lanes or cycle tracks on a roadway. And we're proposing to use this specific green K71 marker. It's got like about a 1/4 inch core into the ground, and the flexible post literally just slides in, and it can be bent over if people do drive over it. But we're proposing a really tight 15-foot spacing along the length of Almond between San Antonio and the high school frontage at Gordon Way, and we're looking at roughly about, correct me if I'm wrong here, if I'm saying the wrong number, I know I said it in my staff report, but it's escaped me, about 50 plastic bollards along that whole frontage. The only area where we're providing less frequent spacing is just along the 5 homes on Almond. That's just to accommodate trash receptacle on trash pickup days. And it just as a reminder, we're looking at this phased improvement. So this first phase with the striping would put in the K71 markers shown in the image on the right, but we could then follow up later with rubber plastic islands in between those bollards. And that's what's shown in the little kind of insert. If you depend on the size of your screen, on the top left of that little insert, you'll see that there's white rubber islands spaced in between the flexible posts, and that just happened to be white post examples. But that would be the next phase, depending on what type of compliance we're seeing along Almond Avenue. But my initial sense is that I don't think we're going to need that. I think if we start with the flexible posts, we'll be in a good position, and we can react quickly to add in the rubber islands later if that's what we need. So that's the end of my presentation, and if you have any questions, I'd be happy to try and answer them for you.
Great, thank you, Jaime. So let's take it back to the commission for questions. Who wants to go first?
I have a question.
All right, go ahead, Steve.
This is really quick. So the only two-way bicycle path that I'm familiar with, Jaime, is the one in Tahoe City. We've got a place up there, and it works pretty well. It goes all the way along Highway 89. However, the challenge is that there's a lot of weaving in and out around joggers, and not every cyclist is in the lane they're supposed to be in, but there isn't that much traffic. Is there a similar two-way bike lane in this area that students in high school use that some of us commissioners who are interested could actually go look at?
I see Suzanne nodding her head. She might know of an example more than me. I only know the ones that I personally designed or worked on or ridden in. And I just worked on one, but it's in Redwood City.
Go ahead, Suzanne. You can provide.
Berry Avenue in front of Loyola School. There's a two-way cycle track that's separated from the roadway.
Thank you.
And also there's the whole path from Los Altos to Palo Alto High School, to Gun High School.
The bike.
Yeah, the bike path. That's two-way path as well.
That's also not that heavily traffic.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, it's really heavy, actually.
Yeah.
Really heavy.
Really?
Yeah.
Yes. Oh, yeah.
I
Okay.
should have done that one. I worked on that one. Oh, well.
Steve, any more questions from you?
That's it.
Great. Who wants to go next? Suzanne.
Awesome. Jaime, remind me again of how wide this cycle track is, edge to edge.
So the cycle track here is in a rolled curve. So normally when we're referencing dimensions, we're usually going from the equivalent of a curve on a rolled curve. So the width's roughly going to be about 8 feet. There's a 2-foot buffer, so it's 10 total between the travel lane.
Okay, I'm a little confused about that because as I understand standards, that's 12 foot is the recommended width for a two-way cycle track with a minimum of 8. So we're kind of skinny on that regard. Is there, so I'm a little worried about that, but let me ask about the bollards. Have you approached the residents and what do they say about having 80 lime green sticks on their street?
So a majority on the latter question, a majority of the bollards that are kind of bunched together, if that's really happening along the frontage of Los Altos High School, along the portion between Almond and Valencia, there's definitely still spacing, but like that first bunch between San Antonio Road and the first home driveway. I think there's if I remember correct, I think there's 8 or 10 of these spaced at 15 feet apart. But then there's only one in the smaller section between the first and second driveway. There's 2 in between the second and third driveway. 1 again between the third and fourth driveway. So at the immediate picture window frontage, it isn't very in your face, but that was by design to accommodate again trash receptacle pickup. The need for residents to get in and out of their driveways easily. And so I don't think that'll be as significant of an impact, but definitely in front of Los Altos High School, it's going to be very visual. It's going to be a strong buffer. And as a reminder, the reason we really explored this to a concept design is because of the planning work that we did with the community early in the spring of late 2019, early 2020. And we're actually accommodating a practice that already exists within the community. And so we're actually making it better at the 8 feet with a 2-foot buffer than it had been in the past.
Again, let me ask my question. Have you approached the neighbors from Valencia to San Antonio and shown them the picture of the lime green bollards that will be in front of their house?
So we've gone to all the neighbors to invite them to the meetings, and and we actually delivered notices for this meeting as well. But to show them this specific picture, we're doing that tonight. We haven't showed him this, you know, on an individual basis. You know, we've continually reached out and invited them here, and so we're really interested to see if there's anyone here from the public tonight, because they did receive the alerts as well.
Thank you, Chair.
Great. Who wants to go next?
Hello.
No further questions? Cindy, is that you? I don't see you. No? Okay. Any further questions from the commission? All right. I have a question for you, Jaime. Where does the bollard line end? Where does it begin? Where does it end?
So the first bollard's going to be about 15 feet behind the crosswalk line at San Antonio. So we're gonna go 15 feet back from there, and then it's basically going to be 15 feet, you know, from there on. That's right. And then along Los Altos High School, we do the same thing at Valencia. We go back 15 feet, and then it's just continuous after that. We try to keep at least 15 feet at the driveways, you know, on each side, so that people can still drive in and out of the driveways at the high school easily.
And where does it end? So the last one is where?
Gordon Way, at the
Gordon Way.
existing raised speed table crosswalk at Gordon Way.
Got it. Okay.
I have one more question.
Steve, can you please wait?
Oh, sure.
Thank you. And then, are we going to discuss tonight also the traffic signaling, or that's going to be another session?
We already had that
We
discussion.
had that. So that's finalized now, and that's consistent with the bollards placement and everything else. And okay, great. And then the parking across on the other side, has that been marked? So how what are we doing in terms of educating everyone that the parking is going to be moving to the other side of the street?
So when we move into the construction phase, we'll go out again and notify the residents, send them mailers, and then when the construction is starting, the contractor will, you know, put notices on doors. But as a reminder, we already striped the parking between Beverly and Frederick, but we just haven't gone back and removed the the existing no parking sign, because that was previously no parking, and replace it with a parking sign.
Okay, so then once the bollards are put in place, assuming that's what happens, what else needs to take place before this project is concluded? What other action items need to be completed?
So we've already received your guys' thoughts and inputs when we were advancing this regarding the need to put no parking. So there will be no parking signs, of course, that go on along the north side of Allen between San Antonio and Valencia. And there's already existing no parking between Valencia and Gordon at the high school frontage. So there really is no more needing action that we need after tonight from the commission, because we're already in the construction phase. We've gotten bids for the striping. We just got our bid today for the traffic signal work that we're moving forward with. So we're actually ready just to build this now.
Okay, and then, hey, Gaku, can you please turn off the chat? And then Jaime, the information also, we got the school district, the high school, and then the police. What kind of information exchange do we need to have with them so they're up to speed?
So we're in contact with the principal from the high school, the vice principal. So once we're in construction phase, we're just going to email them and let them know that, hey, this will be completed, you know, in the spring, ready for anybody that is going to classes if there is session this school year, at a minimum, to let them know that it'll be ready for the fall.
And the PD?
Police department already knows we're doing this.
They know, okay.
They already know about this, yes.
Okay, great. Thank you. No questions from me. So let me take it now to the public and then take questions from members of the public. I see, Hala, you're raising your hand, so I'm going to give you 3 minutes.
Chair, Steve Katz had another question.
Oh, sorry, Steve, go ahead. You had a question. Apologies. Go ahead.
Yeah, Jaime, I know that we talked about the signal before. When I observe the kids now, a lot of them detour over and press the button on the signal light post in order to get the light to turn and the green Walkman. how will they know that there's a new electronic signal and they don't have to detour over there?
So one of the things that we have in the plan here, it's just so small you can't see it, is we're adding in what are called bicycle detection stencils to tell the bicyclists where they need to stop. That's going to be the guide to tell them that that's where they need to be. When we do the traffic signal modification work to put in the extra bike signals and the dynamic or extinguishable no right turn signs that come on during bicycle presence, we're also going to add in some cables for future equipment. There's a new product out on the market, came out about a year ago. It's a little blue bike detector indicator that works with the video detection system that we already have. And so when the video detection system does in fact detect the bicyclist, they'll get a visual cue with the blue light turning on to tell them that they've been detected. But that's not part of the current signal modification phase. We'll probably do that next year in the fall.
And will that detect the bikes on both sides of the street?
So the video detection system that's already there will do that. So that'll work day one once we turn on the signal modifications and the new striping.
Okay, thank you.
And you, Suresh, go ahead.
Jaime, last time myself and another commissioner made a suggestion that maybe it would be a good idea, to essentially address the system that Steve just raised, to extend that green striping or some sort of a striping across San Antonio to the other side. Did the city consider that?
That actually is in the striping plan that was put out to bid. So that is going to happen. Coming from downtown, the skips that are shown black here in this drawing, those will be green, and there'll be a big green bike box that goes along the frontage on San Antonio to tell bikes to turn right towards the high school. It's just not shown on this older drawing. I think I might have, when I put this together, I think I might just use an old drawing. I didn't notice that. But it is.
Yeah, I want to make sure that I got it right. I'm talking about going west on Almond and then across San Antonio.
West on Almond. You mean to go across the street?
Yes.
Yeah. That's in. Correct me if I'm wrong, Gaku. I believe that's in the striping that we put out to bid. I actually think I'm showing the wrong striping. I didn't notice that.
Yeah, it is.
Okay.
Gaku, while we're doing the public comments, do you want to see if you can find that drawing? I'll look for it too, and we'll put it up so that we get visual confirmation for the commission.
Okay. Any further questions from the commission?
Yes.
All right, so I'm going to get comments from the public. Anyone from the commission? All right, so I'm going to turn it now to the public. I'm going to take questions from the members of the public. I see 5 hands raised. You will have each 3 minutes to make your comments. This is not a dialogue with the commission, so please do not ask questions that we cannot answer, but you can make your comments and ask questions that we can take note of. So Hala, please go ahead. You get 3 minutes.
Yeah, hi everyone. Thank you, Nadeem. So my question, I guess my concern is more of, I can appreciate the safety measures that are taken for the bikers. However, I live right on Almond Avenue, which is across from the fire station, the very first house. And we are a family of 4. Sometimes my family visits, we have 5. So what happens, I really don't know what happens with the parking in terms of having my kids' cars park out there, because we each have a car. If anyone can comment on that. And also, Jaime, I had no idea of this whole project. I actually was notified by my neighbors. So no one has ever mentioned or sent any documentation or email to us to let us know about this. So just a heads up that I live on 53 Almond and I had no idea. So my concern was really the parking outside of the hideous posts that are going to be, sitting in front of my house. But the bigger concern is the parking.
Sure, yeah, I can definitely try and answer that question. And I apologize if this is something.
Participants, is not going to be able to raise hands.
Hey, guys, can you please mute? Go ahead.
Yes, again, I apologize if you had not heard about this. we've had, I don't know, I want to say probably close to 10 or 12 meetings on Almond Avenue over the past year and a half. I personally went to the homes along Almond several times on my own and knocked.
He's
Left my
proposing
business card
restriping the corner of
and
Almond
messages
Avenue
to
and
meeting.
San Antonio
So,
Road.
Gakko, can you, I'm sorry, Jaime, can you please for a second? If you are not allowed to speak, please mute yourself. Gakko, please mute everybody except Jaime. Go ahead, Jaime.
yeah, so again, we've really gone out of our way to try and notify people that this was going on. And so the decisions to kind of remove the parking to allow the rest of this design to move forward, that happened probably close to 9 or 10 months ago now. And we're in a construction phase for the final element of the striping. But the parking will be eliminated along Almond Avenue, along the north side of the street for the 5 homes that are there. It sounds like that's one of yours, including yours, from all San Antonio to Valencia. And we added parking on this across the street in the block between, the drawing's gone here. The names are escaping. Let me pull that up real fast. Here we go, between Beverly and Frederick, and that's parking that didn't previously exist before. So that we've accommodated that in the striping that we did over the summer, and we're going to put in remove the no parking restrictions that exist today when we do the rest of this work to actually allow parking to occur there. So there is technically going to be less parking there, but when we were doing our measurements, we were hearing input from the other homeowners. A majority of the homeowners were in support. We just never heard back from, and you might be one of the people that we didn't hear back from that was living towards the first couple of homes closer to San Antonio. But you will have parking across the street on Almond, and of course there is parking on Beverly and on Frederick.
All right, thank you. And one last thing I wanted to mention: there are 3 people on the call that are that have called in. They're not able to raise their hands because they're calling via phone. So they just texted me and wanted me to let you know they'll be commenting on this as well.
Great.
Yeah, that's what we're here for. Yeah, thank you. Please do.
Great. Roberto, you're next.
Hi, this is
Go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
So I have to tell you that I really, can you hear me?
Yes,
can you hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was totally unaware of this. I did get a letter in the mail 2 days ago, and I am horrified by this. I think sticking those, whatever you call them, K71 is really, really ugly. It is totally unnecessary. If I don't have any problem with, you having the bicycle lane on that side. I think that, the painting on the ground, plus the solid horizontal line, plus the other 2 horizontal lines with stripes is totally adequate. We do not need for you guys to come into our neighborhood and do this. And I need to tell you that I did call a friend who lived on Almond, who also said she was not notified by this. I know you guys use slang words like cycle track, but the neighborhoods do not know what's going on. And I'm appalled that you're moving forward. And I said, I really want to be respectful to you guys, but we live here. And the answer is no. You have not, in the middle of COVID, done any kind of community outreach that is adequate. People don't know what's going on. And we really do not want those green things sticking out of the ground.
Great. Thank you, Roberto. Nishad, you're next. 3 minutes.
Hi. Yeah, hi. So I am in 93 in the 5 houses that you mentioned. And I am also opposed to the plan to put those cones up there. I think that I'm actually a new owner in this place, but I haven't seen that mailer either. And I think that while I appreciate the safety precautions that you're introducing for the cyclists, I think a better solution, which is more aesthetic, as well as taking into account our concerns, would be more advantageous, truly speaking. And I also think that, have you considered putting the bike lane on the other side where there are fewer driveways?
Okay. Thank you, Nishad. Danny, you're next, 3 minutes.
Thanks. So I'm the 73 Almond owner, and when I see this yesterday, I feel shocked. I do not know why we implement some things and notice us only 2 days for this meeting, and prior to that, there's no information at all. What I see is the bike lane idea is good, but our street is already cramped. You see the San Antonio going to Almond. Before there are 2 lanes, 2 car lanes. Right now already have 3 car lanes, and there's no more space. And you want to squeeze 1 lane in, and we did not even notice it. And plus, you put us a cone there. We are turned into our driveway or go out of driveway. We need the shoulder to have a buffer zone to take off. If you put those there, then it's create a hazard for us, a safety problems there. So we don't like it. And in fact, all those neighbors here is so overwhelming by these actions. We did not get noticed, and we hope the city can improve the notification earlier so that we can solve this one earlier. Otherwise, like right now, those 3 signs or line already like beautifully painted, and there's no way for us to to change anything for the prior work has been done. So again, my conclusion is I don't want the bike lane there. Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Danny. Tom Shoop, you're next.
Hi, thanks. I don't live on Almond, but I live 2 blocks from there, and I've biked through that intersection for 25 years. I think anything that's done there that streamlines and makes the bicycle traffic safer is a good thing. I think one of the best things is it should get the bicycle traffic off the sidewalk, and I hope there's going to be enforcement of that. And there's an opportunity here for education. I hope that the city somehow works with the high school to just tell the students that bicycles don't belong on the sidewalk. They're supposed to act like vehicles. And the reason for this whole change is to get them off the sidewalk as well as keep them separated from traffic. So I think there's a lot of positives about this. I hope the bicycle detection for someone biking west on Almond towards San Antonio is much improved. The under the pavement detector has never worked in the last 25 years. So I understand that this is going to video detection for westbound on Almond. I don't know that Los Altos has any other experience with video detection, so I'd like to hear the commission comment on that. But I see a lot of bad bicycle behavior because the left turn detector has never worked. And I'd like the commission to just state again if there's any changes to the bike lane on the south side of Almond. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Tom. You want to answer quickly the questions here, Jaime, especially on the
Sure. Yeah. So in response first to the last speaker, so we have video detection existing along San Antonio Road and a couple of other locations in the city, but I don't believe we have any bicycle detection zones currently programmed within them. I have to verify that. That might be why you're not seeing the detection accuracy that you're probably looking for on westbound Almond. But when we do these modifications, part of the work scope for our electrical contractor that's doing the additional bike signals is to actually re-aim and reprogram all the video detection cameras to add in those bicycle specific or bicycle differentiation detection zones. So you'll definitely see an improvement. I think what will be the biggest improvement is when we add later the detection indicators to let you know you've been detected. That is, again, a relatively new technology, just under a year old. We don't have any of those in Los Altos yet, but this would be the likely first place we put it in later in the fall once all this other work is done. was hoping that answered that question. And then with this design, the bike lane on the south side that previously existed already went away. It went away over the summer, and what's on Almond eastbound coming from San Antonio going towards the high school towards El Monte is a Shero facility for the first 2 blocks between San Antonio and Beverly and actually I take it back. The first block only along the fire station. So it's a wider lane. I think we did, if I'm wrong, Cook, I think we did 13 or 14 feet of a width lane, and that's a shared lane and shared bicycle space on the roadway. You see the 2 green Sheros in that space, and the bike lane opens back up again at Beverly, all the way to El Monte.
Great. Thank you, Jaime. Caillou, am I saying your name properly? You're next.
Yes, can everybody hear me?
Yeah, go ahead. You got 3 minutes. Go ahead, please.
Okay, all right. I'm a homeowner between San Antonio and Valencia, and I am completely with Roberta on this one. We were not informed about the type of cones to be installed along our street until recently, like within the last 2 days. We thought it is just a repaint of the bike lane, or what you call like a bike track. I do remember being approached by some city people knocking on my door and telling me that the bike lane is going to be redone, repainted, and I thought that was it. So I would say that we have been tricked into this final stage without telling us what's really being installed till the last minute. So if we can't overturn this decision right now on this platform, then I think this meeting, if it's just for us to vent our moods, I don't think, I think this is extremely unfair if this is just a venting platform instead of a decision-making platform involving all the homeowners along this section. So with that said, I'm very strongly against this. I have lived here for more than 7 years, and I think the bike traffic and car traffic are doing fine just as it is. Maybe like the other speaker said, some education to the high school kids is necessary, but the cones are completely unnecessary. I don't see how they're going to help the safety along the street. I think it's redundant and a waste of our taxpayers' money. And also, it damages the whole look of the community. It will hurt the images of our curb appeal and the home values of these 5 or 6 houses. So can I ask, do we still have a say in this decision, or this decision has already been made without our consent?
Thank you for your input, Caillou. We'll take your input and then we'll deliberate as a commission.
Okay.
John Gray, you're next.
If I can add something, sorry, Nadim.
Yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to say that my neighbor, she's almost 90 years old. We just talked to her. She doesn't use computer, so she doesn't know how to voice her concern, but she's also very strongly against this. We are on 73. She's on, I think she's 63. Actually, 83. 63
Okay.
or 83.
It's noted,
Yes.
Caillou. Thank you very much for relaying that information for your neighbor.
So when do we hear back?
We will deliberate tonight, and then you'll
On the
hear
question.
the deliberation tonight.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, it's all input that we're collecting right now. John Gray, you're
thank
next. 3 minutes.
Hello, I live on the corner of Valencia and Almond, and over the years I've seen lots of bicycle actions that are very dangerous. So I support making these bike lanes. But I do not support these bollards. They look ugly. They look very industrial. It will ruin the look of our local area here. So I suggest putting in the bike lanes, painting them, but I would leave the bollards off for 6 months or so, or a year, to see how the bike lanes work without them, because I think they'll work just fine without the bollards. Thank you.
Thank you, John. John S., you're next.
Sorry, John S. I was John S.
Oh, sorry. Okay, the two. Okay, so you're the same one then. You're logged in twice. Okay, great. So I don't see any more requests from the public to speak.
Excuse me, may I speak? I couldn't raise my hand.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. State your name, please.
Yes, my name is Scott Spielman, and I live a few blocks from Almond. I use that road every day, and I first of all want to commend the engineering work and the commission for considering this. Bicycle safety should be a high priority, and I like to see what you're doing. I would like to go further and say painting the lanes makes so much sense. They will be an improvement. Removing traffic from sidewalks makes so much sense. I also spend time on Cuesta. Cuesta is a 35-mile-an-hour road, and there are bicycle lanes there, and there are not the bollards. I think the bollards are unattractive. I think that it would negatively impact the residents there, and I think that is overkill and a mistake, considering that this road is 25 miles an hour, and I have not seen anything like that on Cuesta, which is 10 miles an hour faster. I'd also like to add that I believe that the community engagement was somewhat deficient here by the staff, and I think that they should go back to the community and work with them and listen to them. Somehow the message did not get through as I've listened to residents. I also serve on a commission, and I know how important it is to engage the community, and we have sought on the commission on which I serve, Parks and Rec, to really engage residents, to listen to them, to tell them, to inform them, to notice them, and to meet with them. So I would encourage staff and perhaps a commissioner or two from Complete Streets to engage the community and the neighborhood here, those that are being impacted. So thanks for your work and your consideration. I believe that you're heading in the right direction. I believe the bollards might be just a bit too much.
Thank you, Scott. Any more members of the public who wish to speak on this item?
Yes, I do.
Okay, go ahead, state your
Can you
name.
hear me?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
State your name.
There are many hands raised in the sidebar.
My name is Premika Ratnam, and I live at 63 Almond. And I want to say that all the neighbors between San Antonio and Valencia that face Almond, they were not really given much notice. I don't believe I received a letter, and nor did Hala. And we are all seriously opposed to the green bollards. I think apart from impacting our real estate, it will be a distraction, and somebody might hit themselves and hurt their spine, connecting with these divisions. So I think they're both unsafe and unnecessary. If they put a picture of a bicycle on the bicycle lane, and also focus on educating people at Los Altos. Now, I was a Los Altos mom, and I'm very much for biking. My son used to bike to school every day, but I have to say that the school principal and the thing, they talk a little bit about cycling, but they are really used to having people drive to school, even from close by around the neighborhood. So I think there needs to be an engagement of some long-term program where the children are educated, they have some respect for rules. Everything is not about flirting on the street and screaming and shouting. Some respect for rules and education about performing in the future will be helpful. A serious program with Los Altos High School, I think, will be not only a contribution towards bike safety, but also just performing as adults in life and respecting the road and rules. The green bollards are completely unnecessary, and none of us consulted, and nobody's for it. And I have even talked to some neighbors from the other side of the street. They too are concerned about safety of having something sticking out in the middle of the road. So I think, I would say that 99% of the people living in that area that are deeply impacted are against it, and we were not consulted, and this is completely improper. So I would really appreciate it if this green thing was removed And we're also bike safety and having bike lanes. It's quite a busy intersection already with a lot of instructions. So I think, you know, it may take a while for people to understand all the different processes. So I hope it's streamlined nicely, but without the green bollards.
Great, thank you.
Please do keep us posted. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Any members of the public who wish to speak? If you're on-
Yes, Marianne
Yes,
Hutchinson.
there are 6 hands raised.
All right, Mary Ann, go ahead.
I would like to say that I echo the comments that have been made. We live at the corner of Frederick and Almond, to the southwest corner of Frederick and Almond. Our parking has already been restricted on our street previously because of the number of cars from the high school. We can park in our driveway, but that's about it. So I am wondering how this parking on the other side of the street is going to work for the residents. We have neighbors, we have to have our guests park way down the street so that they can find a place to park and walk back. I do agree with the other comments that were made that minimal consultation of the neighborhood was done. And we did not know anything about this meeting until 2 days ago. And we think this has been not so well handled. We appreciate your listening to us.
There's all these people saying they had no notification until 2 days ago.
Hey, Gaku, can you please mute everybody except Mary?
Marianne.
Mary Ann, excuse me. Mary Ann, go ahead. Please continue.
No, I am finished, but I am disappointed in the way this has been handled.
All right, we heard you. Then thank you, Mary Ann.
Minimal consideration of residents.
Okay, thank you, Mary Ann. All right, anyone from the public who wishes to speak?
Yes.
Okay, state your name, please.
I'm John Great.
Okay, John, you've already had your chance. Sorry, so we're gonna skip over.
No, I did not. It was switched off from me immediately to another John.
Ah, okay. Then apologies. Go ahead, John. You got 3 minutes.
Okay, so I find those lime green bollards an atrocious eyesore. And I'm afraid if we give an inch of Almond Avenue to them, it will establish a precedent that may be imposed further throughout our residential thoroughfares. I don't live on Almond. I live just off Fremont, and I'm particularly concerned about whether the long-term thinking, if not yet proposed, designs on Fremont Avenue would ultimately result in such atrocious green bollards showing up. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, John. Anyone else who wishes to speak from the public? Okay, last call. Very well. So with that, I'm going to bring it back to the commission for deliberation. Who wants to go first? All right, let's actually.
If you need a volunteer, I can.
Stacey, go ahead.
Sure, thank you. So I will try to keep it brief.
Excuse me, sorry. Gaku, can you please turn off the video for all the members who are not on the commission? Thank you. Go ahead, Stacey, please.
Okay, thank you. So I think my first comment is both for staff and for the residents who are joining us this evening. I think for staff is we're hearing from a lot of residents who feel they haven't had any notice about this project until the last couple days. Now, this project, for the residents, this project for Almond Avenue, not the bollards specifically, but in general for Almond Avenue has been going on a long time, including public meetings pre-COVID where we've had large numbers of people come and give feedback. And so I guess the question for staff is, or the comment for staff is, what happened that we suddenly have a large group of new people showing up with new feedback? And then my second comment will be, we've heard a lot of feedback tonight about opposition to the green bollards. I haven't heard a lot of, past feedback has been very positive from the community regarding the cycle track and the bike lanes. And we've heard some positive feedback tonight. And we haven't heard a lot of objections to that except the green bollards. So I think the question I have for staff is, are there any other options for us to consider? Because you've only presented one. And then I'm gonna defer a little bit to my fellow commissioner, Suzanne Ambiel, to see if she has any ideas, because I know she always has great ideas for things like that, to see if she has any ideas. I will say as a third comment is, I do feel, given that this is a cycle track, which means we have two-way cycle traffic. I know other speakers brought up Fremont Avenue and Cuesta and other places like that. We don't have two-way cycle traffic on those. We have cyclists on both sides of the road, but we don't have a single place where there's two-way cycle traffic. And the reason for bringing all the cyclists onto one side of the road is because they were riding over there anyway, and we're trying to give them a safe place to be. So my comment really is, I do think we need some kind of buffer, whether it's this one or if we can find some alternative that better suits the community, because those kids need protection when they're on a two-way cycle track right near a busy intersection like that. And yes, we need to do education for them and teach them the right safety behaviors, but we do need to give them some protection as well. And this is not heavy-duty protection. This is flexible things that, you know, vehicles can drive over. So I would also say, with whatever we're putting in, we need to stay on top of maintenance, and we need to make sure that it is giving the kids the safety protection they need. The final comment that I would make, and this is my broken record comment that I've raised other times when this project has been before us, but in relation to, you know, these buffer elements and, you know, the flexibility that they have with the vehicles, because we want to protect the kids, we need to make sure that traffic signal gives timing to vehicles to do the movements they need, like, for example, a right-hand turn onto San Antonio. Because if we don't have enough timing in the traffic signal to do that, like in the afternoon at school pickup time, for example, then there's going to be a much more, I don't know if desire is the right word, desire by vehicle drivers to kind of move more into that cycle track. And I'm very nervous because what's proposed is flexible buffers, and I just don't want to see any kid get hurt. So that's the end of my comments. You know, if we come with more, if there's more options for buffers, you know, I may reserve the right to chime in again. Thank you.
And Chair, if it's okay, I'd really like to comment. I know there's been a lot of comments
Go ahead, Heidi.
From the community, and also to respond to Stacy's comments as well. So first of all, for the people that are here for the community, thank you for being here tonight. Like Stacy mentioned, I mentioned earlier, we've been having discussions about Almond Avenue probably going on a year and a half now, and we've historically had large numbers of people attend our meetings. So we know that outreach we've been doing has been reaching people. And for the 5 homes that are along Almond between San Antonio and Valencia, we were really trying hard to get word to you. That's why what we don't normally do, we did for you by going to your homes and putting notices on your doors and leaving our business cards. So, you know, that aside, I'm really glad that you're here tonight because, you know, the cycle track is going in. That decision has been made. You know, the parking changes that are going to be taking place pretty soon, those are going in pretty soon. But the vertical elements, I'm glad we now have something that has really caught your attention. The vertical elements, and just to remind the commission, the first version of the drawings that we submitted to you did not have green vertical elements. That was an element that the commission requested to try and introduce some type of a vertical protection. I will be very honest, you know, even though we're presenting this, I drew this up and I'm the guy that made the recommendation for the K71 in response to your concerns from the prior meeting, but I don't think we need that many vertical elements on Almond Avenue. It is not consistent with the neighborhood and look and feel of Los Altos. I consistently tell consultants that work in Los Altos, we don't want to be downtown San Jose. We don't want to be downtown San Francisco. You know, don't put plans together that do that. You know, but we were responding to the commission, and I would agree with the residents here. But I also hear the concern from the commission that we do need to go out of our way since we're formally striping in a two-way cycle track, that we need to do something to try and provide protection to bicyclists, specifically the kids, the high school kids that are using this to get to and from Los Altos High School. So I'm going to recommend what we recommended to you previously, that we do have some type of a vertical element, maybe not 50 K71 markers, but I think in the last version we brought to you last month, I think we had 4 or 5 markers just at the start of Valencia, and another 5 or so down at the San Antonio end, and we didn't have any in front of the high school, and we didn't have any in front of the 5 homes. So I think that might be a better solution to find a medium between the concerns we're hearing tonight for the first time, the concerns that the commission expressed at the last meeting. And just as a reminder, we're not putting K71 vertical markers on Fremont Avenue. We didn't even let the consultants recommend that for that community. And that's a corridor where cars are going 40 miles an hour. So I think the residents' concerns tonight are truly valid. We do hear you. Thank you again for being here tonight. We want to find a medium that works for everybody. But because of the fact that we do have the bicyclists, in a two-way stripe cycle that we haven't had before, I think the commission also does have some valid concerns that they brought to us at the last meeting, where we do need to have something. And again, we can always adjust, right? We can be really mobile and quick with putting stuff out. And if that's a meeting that works, and that we can make that work pretty quick. The only challenge for us is a contractual issue, Gaku and Kathy, because our contract bought so many. If we take them out, I don't know if we have to rebid the project, because the value of the project may come down as a result of not putting in that many markers anymore. So that's an item that we can work out, that we can take care of on our own. I just want to say it out loud so you understand as a commission that does have an impact. But I will say again that I'm siding with the residents here. I think that the 50 markers that's on the plan that we put in response to your comments last month, I don't think we need that many.
Okay, thank you, Jaime. Suzanne, you want to go next?
Yeah, love to. For something as visual and as stunning as these types of bollards, I think that a note on a resident's door that we're having a meeting to talk about the street is insufficient, that a photo would be more likely to raise their attention, and putting that on the door handle versus sending email, I think is really critical for something visual like this. Super important. A notice of a complete streets meeting is insufficient. I am thankful that the residents showed up and showed up vocally, and I appreciate their civic duty and their courtesy in presenting to us. I am not a fan of the lime green sticks. I think that we need to seek other alternatives. I'm also not a fan of relying on paint and paint alone to protect a life. Right now we have a cycle track that goes 2 ways, and it is substandard in terms of width. If you look at NACTO guidelines, it recommends a 12-foot plus a 3-foot buffer. We are far narrower than that. We have kids that will be moving at speed, at one another, with pedestrians and cars. So I do believe we need something, but maybe what we need to do is pause. We need to go ahead and implement the cycle track as is, study it for 6 months. Once school is back in and traffic returns to normal, and determine what type of physical barrier we might need. Maybe that's a lip, a ridge on the street. Maybe that's some other means to physically separate the cycle track from the flow of traffic. I don't know. I am not a roadway engineer. I feel that the bollards are a bit too much, honestly speaking. Stacy Banerjee, thank you for your confidence in me. I'm not a roadway engineer. That's city staff. So all I can do is, from my own personal experience and looking at what others have implemented and looking there and kind of observing the behavior. I heard plenty of comments about education and teaching people about how to do it safely. I am a cycling safety educator, and I've done so for 16 years. And I will tell you this about that. High school students already have all the answers. The attempts to re-educate them about safe cycling is an uphill battle. I'm willing to fight that battle again, but I don't think we should pin our hopes and our kids' lives on that. Thank you for the time.
Thank you, Commissioner Ambiel. Let's see, Commissioner Venkatraman, you want to go next?
Thanks, Chair. I echo the comments made by some of the other commissioners. I'm glad to hear from the residents, and I think it's pretty clear the message that we hear from them regarding the bollards from their perspective. My concern is primarily the safety of the bicyclists on that cycle track, and if the city, I mean, the comments from Jaime today is to the bollards may be overkill. If that is a part of the decision, then I think we need to figure out what alternatives there are. And I second the proposal for us to pause, study what's going on for the next year, and then come back with a proposal as to how best to protect the cyclists. One of the worries that I have is maybe also the fact that it's only 8 feet, and having these bollards may be distracting to the bicyclists, especially school kids, and that may itself be a problem. So I think we should carefully consider that as well, and come back to see if then the buffer zone is sufficient, or we may have to extend the buffer zone further and possibly then add visually more aesthetic separating mechanisms. But the primary concern for me is the safety of the bicyclists, and considering that we need a solution, I think it's only prudent for the city staff to go back and study this further to make a proposal that fits with both the residents, that actually satisfy the residents' needs and address the safety.
Hey, Chair, I apologize. I don't mean to keep cutting in, but because we have a project that's in construction, we need you guys to really pull your heads together today.
Yeah, we'll do it, Jaime. We'll do it. So let me just go through the commission. Commissioner Katz, go ahead, please.
I just wanted to give you an alternative to see that I think might really make people happy if you let me just show the image really quick.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. Okay. Why wasn't it done, by the way, in the main presentation? Why was it left to the end?
This alternative?
Yes.
The commission is the one that was requesting a stronger vertical element last month, and that's what we're giving you.
So why aren't you giving us options?
We're trying to respond to your comments from last month. This is just another alternative that I didn't think was consistent with your prior comments, but it's an alternative. That's just the reason I want to show it. So this is a little bit of a different application. This is not a cycle track buffer. This is actually a painted median island. This happens to be in San Ramon, in front of the new downtown city center. But what they did there, which is the equivalent of a buffer zone that we're talking about, is they did their traditional double yellow, or for us would be a white stripe. But then they used those raised pavement markers that you normally used to see in lane lines, and they're really, really tightly spaced. And I can tell you, nobody drives over that, because I drive that almost weekly. And it does a really good job of, if people start to drive it, it pushes them out of it pushes the bicycles, the motorists, out of the painted median. But it has a shortcoming also, in that those are not friendly to bicyclists, right? And so bicyclists that would ride over them, would not be, they may not be comfortable, but it's the same thing with the vertical K71 bollard. This is just more of a flat.
I mean, can you please keep that one up? I think this should have been done as an option in the first presentation to give the members of the public the chance to chime in. So keep that picture up, please, the way it is. And I'm going to reopen it back to members of the public. I'm going to give anyone who wishes to speak 1 minute to give us your thoughts on this new second option and see whether you're in favor or not. For those who, especially for those who live on Almond, I'd like to sort of hear what your input would be on this second option, specifically 1 minute each. Roberta.
Hi. So I think it's really important that the residents in the area know that they can go to city council if they're not happy with this.
Roberta, I'm asking you for
that is an
the
option.
listing, please, specifically. Keep it
Yeah, I would much rather see these raised cylinders in the street than the bollards. Like I said, we will fight the bollards. I'm sorry that,
okay.
You know, the outreach.
We heard you, Roberta, please. So 1 minute is up. Next. Caillou next, please.
Yes. Hi, I think this is definitely much more preferable than the bollards. The bollards are just visually, they're just very hideous. But I also think, you know, City Council should think about there are other roads that's much more trafficked by bikes and cars. Why are those roads not putting up bollards or stripes like this? Why is Almond being targeted? Even though it's a relatively low speed road. And also another speaker or a resident said that we should just put the bike lane paints, you know, the stripes up and then give it 6 months and see. Maybe it will do a good job already. Maybe these type of dense stripes and the bollards don't need to be considered at all.
Great. Thank you, Caillou. Nishad, you're next. 1 minute each, please.
Yeah, exactly. I think we don't want the bollard for sure. Why don't we just leave the paint and introduce these little, you know, whatever they call. Trying to bring them up later after 6 months or a year.
Great. Thank you, Nishad. Hala.
I 100% support these new yellow ridges. I think they'd be much better. So I'm complete supportive of these this new look. Thank you for sharing.
Thank you, Hala. Danny?
Yes, I'm still concerned about the parking space because we already lost the other side of parking space, and then right now we have to deprive the parking space for the other side. That is my other concern because our home is need a lot of maintenance, and then need the gardener to come back and forth, and need the temporary space for them to do the work, and provide the space for some occasional visitors to here. So that's my concern.
Great, thank you, Danny. Anyone else from the public who wish to speak on this particular proposed, from 1 minute, go ahead, state your name, please.
Yeah, I'm Premika Ratnam from Almond. I think that a painted bicycle thing is sufficient. I'm driving on El Monte right now. Well, not right now, but I was driving earlier. And I noticed that there's this bicycle drawing, and I think that's sufficient. Sometimes, you know, like someone mentioned, that if it's raised, somebody could lose their balance. I don't necessarily think that it's such an asset. And I think people can follow the bicycle design. As one of the people mentioned, that these lanes are actually narrower. So the more obstructions you put, the more narrow actually the effective bicycling area is, and the less forgiving it is. I'm also concerned about the parking, like, you know, Hala said she has a few children, and then other people have people who come to visit and work on the premises.
Great.
And so,
Great, thank you. We heard that comment. Thank you.
definitely remains. Thank you.
Thank you. Very well. Anyone else from the public on this particular proposal here?
Yes, very briefly, John. Great. I think what's shown on the screen is a very desirable alternative to the lime green ballard. And I would go so far as put that in place and eliminate all the other green striping that's proposed. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Okay, last call for any members of the public on this particular proposal. 1 minute.
I would like to say, this is Marianne Hutchison again. I would like to say thank you very much for this alternative proposal, and we look forward to hearing more information from you. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Marianne. Okay, last call. Okay, I'm going to bring it back to the commission here. I'm going to actually restart again with Stacy. Any thoughts on this?
Could Suzanne volunteer to go first? I'd like to.
Okay.
If you want me
Sure,
to, I will,
I
but
will go first. I will go
who has
first.
good feedback on this.
I think this is a reasonable alternative. I know that bots dots can be problematic when kids ride over them and they're not being careful. It can chip you. It can also wake you up and tell you you're not in the place where you're supposed to be. It is also a wake-up call for cars. I'm still very concerned about having a two-way cycle track on a busy intersection.
Dots. I didn't understand that.
John, can you please mute yourself? Thank you. Go ahead, Suzanne.
A bots dots is that rounded, mounded plastic dot that you stick on the roadway. That's what forms that sort of zipper pattern in the middle in yellow, if you will. I'm making Jaime just absolutely cringe because I'm just butchering his whole area of profession. But I do feel that is a reasonable alternative for us to explore, especially at the intersection at San Antonio, where Almond and San Antonio meet. Beyond that, I'm up to hear what a traffic engineer and a roadway designer would say. So those are my comments on that. They can be slippery, they can be dicey, but they do get your attention.
Thank you, Suzanne. Who wants to go next? Stacy? All right, go ahead.
Yeah, thank you. And thank you, Suzanne, for sharing your feedback. You spend a lot more hours on the bicycle than I do, so I value what you have to say. I think
So does Nadeem. So does Nadeem.
Yes, he does. So I think what we're resoundingly hearing from the neighbors who live nearby is no to the green bollards. I think we're getting a mixed bag of, what they desire otherwise. And I think from my perspective, or even our perspective, we just want to ensure the safety of the kids in that two-way bicycle track. So I've heard, Suzanne, you give some good things about this proposal that's on the screen now and some things that aren't so good. I guess so I'm open to this one for sure. I guess the question that I also have is for Jaime and Suzanne, or your opinion on what are those little round, low rise little domes that go in different spots? Is that something that's possibly an option, or will those not work for us either? Jaime, do you know I don't know the technical term for those.
This is Jim. Jaime had to step out for a minute. He just told me.
Are you talking about truncated domes?
I don't know what the technical term is, but they're kind of those little low rise, few inches up, circular domes.
I've seen those used in Palo Alto in certain locations, and they were promptly removed within 3 months. I don't know why.
Yeah. So Stacy, I think what I'd like to do here is, I don't want to turn this into an engineering meeting and then try to debate what the options might be.
Yeah.
I'd like to bring it back to staff and then have them come back with recommendations of what might be feasible and safe at the same time. So we've got two options in front of us right now. We can recommend one or just shoot both of them, whatever we want to do. That's sort of our task in front of us. So let's not be engineers tonight, please.
Okay, that's fine. I think I'm open to hearing what more options are that are safe. I think the green ballards don't seem to be working for the community.
Yeah. And they can come back at a future date. They don't have to do it tonight. Yeah. Suresh.
I just wanted to add to my previous comments, is just to make sure that we have the right solution. This seems like a reasonable, solution, but I think I'm not sure why it was not presented in the first place, and I'd like to hear a little bit more to make sure that, and give staff the time to make sure that this is the right one, this is the right solution.
Okay, thanks, Cindy.
Hi, yeah, I think, well, generally reiterating our previous comments. I think in previous meetings, we had expressed the need for some type of barrier, whether, we didn't, I don't think, specified what type it needed to be, but a lot of it was specifically to accommodate the cyclists that are going in both directions, and also because it's a more narrow space to give them more of a buffer. And then specifically in the areas where it's, where the intersection is and at the turn on, what was it, El Monte? Sorry, not El Monte, the other street, San Antonio, to make sure that we can reduce any areas of conflict. I don't think we originally specified that they needed to be such big elements. So thank you for all of the public and all their comments. My concern with kind of what worries me about this solution is that we kind of had it in the back pocket, it seemed, and we pulled it out in the middle of the meeting, which makes me nervous that maybe there's another option that if we spent a little bit of time considering, it would be even better. So I think my general thinking is, I think there is some validity to the comment where we could go with the existing striping and see how people are using it, and as traffic comes back, understand better what kind of barriers are needed. But if there are like practical constraints in terms of the contract or the timing and what's already been out to bid, something like this that is lower visibility would, I think we're all hearing, is preferable. I would just want staff to consider all the other options if there is some other similar ones that are better than the one that we're seeing here.
Steve.
Yes, well, first of all, I'd like to thank all the residents and those of you that are still on the call. You can let your neighbors know that your input is really valuable to the commission. For listening to all of you, it sounded like that there was almost universal support for a cycle track and also universal non-support for the green bollards. And in my mind, green bollards are not a guardrail. And so what we're looking for is some kind of deterrent to protect the children, the high school kids. I don't know whether the what we're looking at right now is the perfect answer. What's clear is we haven't communicated that to the entire community yet. And one of the issues was that the green bollards weren't communicated till very late in the game. And I think we need to not only get the right solution, but we need to communicate it very effectively in a way that it's totally understood, not just by the commission, but by the community as well. And I think that staff needs to kind of leave this meeting and take a good hard look at this alternative, even though it appears to be better at first sight, and then come back and say, yes, we support it, and then have that communication session. And I also think that we could move forward with a cycle track support on any level for them. So that's all I would say.
Thank you, Steve. Tom.
So I would like permission to agree with what everybody else is saying. The one thing that I was wondering is there a cost difference between these yellow ridges versus the green ballards, or even say white ballards? So that was just something that I don't know if Jaime would know already, or if it's something that we could look at to see if there's really one versus the other might make a big difference or might not. But yeah, I like this. This seems to be a better alternative also. Thank you.
Thank you. So it seems to me that what we have in front of us is a choice between an option that is universally opposed by the residents, the bollards, and another option that is at best its efficacy is unknown. And from my personal perspective, frankly, it's scary as hell because as a cyclist, those bot dots scare the daylights out of me. And I can only imagine how those kids, as they're cycling down the cycle track and they're probably 2, 3 abreast, and they're chit-chatting, not watching, and one of them strays over the bot dots, and next thing you know, he or she lands on the pavement. That's not what we want to do. So I think it seems to me that the third option, which kind of floated around, and that is, we don't know yet what needs to go in there. What we do know so far is we need to stripe it with a buffer, and then we need to go back to the drawing board and then rethink what kind of protection makes sense and not rush it at this point in time. So we know it's not bollards, and my personal view, it's not the bot dots. And so I think it was Suzanne who suggested that we should just keep it as striped with a buffer and then reassess in 6 months and sort of see whether there's a need. And if so, we've had the chance to evaluate a number of options that would make sense. I don't know, maybe Jaime, can you tell me how wide the street would be from the center median to the edge of the buffer?
Gaku, let me stop sharing. Maybe you can pull up the other drawing. The lane width of the one lane going west from El Monte towards San Antonio wouldn't change, though. We would still end up with a 10-foot lane. I think you zoom in a little bit more, Gaku. And then the first stripe is at 10 feet. And then we have the 2-foot buffer and the 8-foot cycle track. And so I'm really happy with either of those last two options. Again, our original concept didn't have any vertical element at all. It was just the buffer. And so I think that's if that's where we're hearing that there's interest, I really like that idea. And there is just general universal consensus in general that people don't like vertical elements in Los Altos that we'll have to deal with on other projects. But we were always proposing, I was using the yellow examples, bot dots as an example, but they would have been white. They wouldn't have been yellow if we used them. So we just have to check with the contractor on that we got bids on. Again, if we remove the markers, if we have to rebid the job or not and completely remove it, because it was a bigger cost item, and there's a requirement where if you pull something out of a bid before you award it and it's like more than 15%, you have to rebid the job. I forget what the exact numbers are, but it's something like that. And I don't know if taking out the 50 or whatever number it was puts us in that mark. But I'm really comfortable on my own with just doing the buffer and then watching it with the start of the school year in the fall and see how it goes.
So let me get a sense from the commissioners, who would be in favor of just the striping without any additional bollards or those bot dots, and then we come back and reassess in 6 months. Can I get a show of hands who would be in favor of that?
As long as we're reassessing.
That's right. We need to reassess, but sort of make sure that we have a better studied option, I suppose, right? Okay, so it sounds like there's some inclination to support that, provided that staff would come back and share with us options for providing additional protection. But Suzanne, you're shaking your head.
Sorry. Yeah, I'm extraordinarily nervous about an 8-foot lane with two-way bikes and pedestrians. I just am very afraid of what's going to happen. And I hope that we have eyes on, literally eyes on, every day, every week for at least a quarter to see how people adjust to this, morning and afternoon, full stop. If we need volunteers, count me in. I do not believe that paint protects cyclists. I do not. And I know how angry motorists get when they have to wait too long. And they will take the lane that's intended for two-way bike traffic. So I do feel like I need a physical barrier, but I do sympathize with the neighbors.
So then should we then say, let's stripe it, but with a clear instruction, with a clear recommendation to staff to examine alternatives beyond the two that were presented tonight?
And track incidents, bicycle incidents, bike car, bike ped, car ped, all incidents that occur in this corridor.
On this corridor.
I think your observation idea is also good too.
Okay, any other thoughts on the commission, or even Jim and Jaime, any thoughts on this?
Yeah, just
I would like to add just to the observation piece, we should include that observation period, either extend it or add additional period for when we think, you know, school's back in session, there's going to be traffic on the street, and we're thinking it's getting the level of use that we are expecting. We should include that time frame, because if we are monitoring it for the first quarter after we install it, maybe the traffic levels aren't back yet.
Agreed.
Jim?
I was just going to respond to something Suzanne said, that it would also mix pedestrians, but there's actually a sidewalk along that whole corridor, so I don't believe pedestrians would be walking in the lane.
They're high school students. You'd be surprised.
All right, so Jim and Jaime, your thoughts on what you heard from the commission now. Essentially, come back with observations over some duration of time that is meaningful, especially when school actually is back in session, plus recommending multiple alternatives that would probably be more suitable to the neighborhood and to this particular situation.
I do think we got really good comment, good from the community and from the commission. So I think we have what we need.
Okay.
Yeah, I agree. I like the idea of closely monitoring it when the kids start back up.
Okay. Suzanne?
I would like to bring this back to a Complete Streets Commission meeting and study session with the neighbors once the striping is in place to gather their additional feedback. And I would like to do that again after the observation period so that we can share the data that we've collected.
Okay.
Oh, November, October sometime. Yeah, sounds good to me.
Okay. I mean, we assume that somehow school will be back in session in the fall, right? Who knows? That's just guesswork, but we'll keep our fingers crossed for that. But assuming that's the case, I guess we'll be in the fall. Tom, go ahead, please.
So with this observation period, I think that's a good idea. Would we be able to put out a camera so we don't have to do it in person? Just a curious question for the city.
We actually have a camera unit in downtown that we were using for the Open Streets program. We could just move that camera to Almond.
So observation means what, by the way? What do we expect to get an observation? Can we put some metrics?
Yeah, when we come back to you with the study session, we can definitely have some proposed metrics. But in general, we're looking for everything you guys said tonight. We're looking for just activity volume, but more importantly, we're looking for incidents. We're looking for amount of riders that do actually ride within the buffer. We want to look at vehicles that are riding into the cycle track and other elements. So we'll track all of those with the camera.
I would also like to suggest that we put a suggestion box or comment box at the high school where kids can drop a note in, or remind them that they can also text their experience with the cycle track to the city at a specific place. So it's not just the camera, but it's the actual users.
I have a quick question for Jaime.
Okay, go ahead.
Jaime, one of the residents talked about enforcement as something they were concerned about. And I know that in my experience, when the Los Altos Police Department gets involved and they park themselves in a visible place when things first change, or if there's an area where they're concerned about a lack of rule enforcement, it really does make a difference. Do you think that there's a way that you could have a cooperation between our Complete Streets and the police department so that when this goes into force, they could take a week or two and have sporadic enforcement drills there?
We actually already do that. When we made the recent changes at Almond over the summer, excuse me, and on Covington, the police, we asked them to do some targeted enforcement for a 2-3 week period. We would do the same thing here again on Almond. So that's already going to happen.
That's great. Thank you.
Good. Jaime and Jim, is that all the input that you need tonight?
Yes.
Okay. Any more last comments from the commission? Great. Thank you. Let's take a 5-minute break. We will reconvene at 7:45.
That's death. It's an additional. This is an additional. Comments. Can you-
Hey, Gaku, can you please reset the raised hand flags on the screen? Thank you. Okay, let's reconvene, folks. 7:45.
Baku, can you also please bring up the presentation for the CSMP item?
Okay. So before you start, let me show that we have quorum again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We do.
I also, Chair, need to make a short announcement before we start the Complete Streets Master Plan item regarding conflicts of interest and asking commissioners to excuse
Yeah,
themselves.
before you do that, I have a few things I need to make sure that everybody understands here because I think there might have been some confusion with the workshop. Sure everybody's back. All right, so let's go ahead and reconvene here. So let me make it very clear what I expect to get done tonight. So we had a study session last week, and what came out very clearly was that we needed a vision element to the CSMP. There was a workshop earlier this evening, and what we're going to do right now is simply have this as an informational session. That means there will be no discussion by the commission of the line drawings. It'll be strictly an information item, and then Jaime, you can just simply provide the information that you collected from the workshop to this team. Once we've had the vision element implemented and we understand the criteria by which we're going to judge those line drawings, then we can come back and deliberate on those projects, perhaps change them or keep them the same. We'll decide what the outcome would be. But for the time being, this is only an informational session.
Thank you, Chair. So very quickly, I understand you're trying to change this into an informational item right now, and that's definitely your prerogative as the Chair. We'll follow your lead. But that is not what we brought forward to you on the agenda that was.
Yeah, you've heard me before, Jaime. I'm not going to discuss it here. You know exactly what my intent was.
Let me finish. Please give me a minute. So with that said, because this is more than an informational as it was presented to the community and to the commission in the agenda posting, I need to just very quickly go over the conflicts of interest. So regardless of whether or not you change this to information tonight, that's completely fine with us at the staff level. The conflict of interest requirements will still apply. So I want to cover those for you so that commissioners can recuse themselves. That's why I started my comments the way that I did.
Yeah, but
so
what I make it clear is that there'll be no discussion by the commission.
That's completely okay with us. It's completely fine. That's not where I'm going with my comments. I'm only bringing this up from the standpoint of conflicts of interest. So we did check in with our city attorneys as we were preparing the Complete Streets Commission agenda for tonight last week, and we got some very specific feedback we want to share with the commission as it applies towards any discussion item from today and in the future as it relates to the Complete Streets Master Plan. When the commission is deliberating a master plan document like the Complete Streets Master Plan in the study sessions that we had last week, and we're not discussing specific project corridor elements, you all have no conflict of interest. You can participate in those discussions, whether it be safe routes to school, master plan type work, you can all participate. But the moment that we introduce into any agenda item a specific project, like a corridor plan line drawing that we presented to the community earlier tonight, and we're going to show you this evening, if you have a real property interest within 500 feet of any one of the corridors, our city's attorney's office is recommending that you excuse yourself completely from this meeting. You would need to log out of the call, and then if you want to give us a number, we can text you. You can come back in. That would normally be how it happens on a video call. It's not just a matter of just not participating, not saying anything. You actually cannot even sit in the discussion. So we did reach out to all of you earlier in the week to inform you of kind of that process, and we did get contacted by 2 of the commissioners. Suzanne and Suresh, I think that was you that reached out. You're on Quest to Drive, and the 2 of you are within the 500 feet a conflict of interest zone for the Clark Avenue concept plan drawing. So unfortunately, we do need to for sure identify you, 2 of you, as needed to excuse yourselves from this discussion. And I didn't hear from anybody else, but that is the requirement. So if your real property interest is within 500 feet of any of those locations, we do need to ask you to excuse yourself.
Okay, thank you. We still have quorum.
Great.
Okay. I had a question. Jaime, will you contact us back by text? You have the number when we are ready to get back
I have
on?
your cell phones on. If it's your cell phone number that's on the Complete Streets Commission,
yes.
Then yes, I will text you.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Great.
Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and get started now, if that's okay.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Gaku, I'm going to have you switch slides for me. So tonight we're going to cover a couple of items related to the Complete Streets Master Plan. We want to first share with you the conceptual plan line drawings that we shared at the community workshop earlier today. I think we had a really great turnout. At the highest level that we were observing, we saw 90 participants earlier today. That includes the people that were from the commission as well as staff. So I would probably say we had closer to 80 people at a high, but that's still a really, really positive turnout from our perspective for this process. And so we want to share with you the same presentation we gave to the residents. And then the other item that's in your agenda packet that wasn't in the workshop was the presentation of our true first real submittal from Alta as it relates to the upcoming bicycle and pedestrian portion of the Complete Streets Master Plan. That's the existing conditions assessment. So we did want to call out that is a document that is in your agenda packet. Jeff from Alta Planning Design, the Alta project manager, is here with us tonight, so I just want to real quick recognize him. And he'll actually walk you through the presentation that he put together for the existing conditions. So with that, I'll kick us off now. Next slide, please. I'm going to pass through this really quick. Next button, please. One more click, Gaku. So the 4 corridors that we're going to discuss tonight are Clark Avenue from El Monte to Cuesta Drive, Covington Avenue from Miramonte to Grant. And just as a quick reminder, the commission saw this plan line already last year when we were developing the plan line and striping for Covington Road, the portion that was already built over the summer. But we reintroduced it to make sure people are aware that it's out there. We also are going to discuss Gordon Way. That is from Almond Avenue in front of the high school down to Hawthorne, and the intersection of Miramonte and Berry. Next slide. Just a quick note again, the website is live for the project, and we highlighted that for people this evening. Next slide. So one thing I did want to also mention that we talked about at the workshop is that we wanted to make sure people understood kind of how we were trying to be equitable and have been trying to be equitable for 2 years now, kind of entering into our 3rd year. You know, we've spent a majority of our plan line work for other projects to date, really in Central and South Los Altos. North Los Altos has not received any attention from us for conceptual plan line drawing work beyond Almond Avenue. Most of our traditional historical work for projects that have been built or are under construction or were just planned for grants have all happened in Central and South Los Altos. So I want to just get that out there because I've been hearing chatter from people that there's a perception of inequity, in how we're administering our kind of plan line process as it relates specific to the Complete Streets Master Plan. But when we're looking at a whole, all the work we've invested into the community, there's a lot of geographic equity of work done within the community. And so what's shown in this drawing here is in the lines in green is where we've done historical plan line work already over the last 2 years in South Palo Alto, or South Los Altos, I apologize, down along Homestead Road, Grant Road, Vineyard. The green is the blue is the area we are resurfacing this coming summer. So we're going to be introducing additional concept plan line processes outside of the CMP, and those are going to focus really in South Los Altos and Central Los Altos. We already did Fremont. You're going to see that again tonight. We're going to do St. Joseph Avenue and the portion of Fremont Avenue north of Loyola Corners, along with Eastwood serving Covington Road. And then the red indicates the corridors that are part of the CMP, and purple is what we've already built in relation to the CMP. But there is a cluster of things that are new around Los Altos High School. I think that's where a lot of the inequity concerns have come forth. But that was, again, council direction to us. But even with that, there's still a lot of geographic equity within the work we've done in Los Altos. We just want to make sure you're aware of that as you're putting your comments together, if not tonight, sometime in the future. Next slide. So Clark Avenue, again, the portion between El Monte and Cuesta, has 2 existing alway stops, one at Hawthorne, kind of in the middle of the corridor area, and one at Cuesta Drive that we put in with the commission's support last year as part of the early construction work for the Cuesta Drive traffic calming project. Next click, please. We are, as if you recall, actively building a new all-way stop as part of the El Monte pedestrian and bicycle pathway project that's currently under construction at El Monte, at the El Monte intersections. That'll happen this summer. And this corridor serves Los Altos High School, Covington School, Springer, and Egan Middle School as well. And so there's a lot of schools that this corridor touches. A lot of people walk and bike on it to and from schools. You just want to kind of put that out for you so that you're aware. Next click, please. Where we could, we're going to show all the data that we have so people understand kind of why we're investing our time and energy in plan line drawings in certain corridors. Along Clark Avenue, there's roughly around 1,300 vehicles per day, split almost evenly, vehicles traveling north and south. But when we captured data in 2019 pre-COVID, at the day that we caught data, we saw at least a minimum of 30 kids kind of in the central area of Clark Avenue serving all those different schools, and another 50 kids and parents that were on their bicycles in that commute 2-hour period in the morning. So a lot of bike ped activity on Clark Avenue, and this does touch Cuesta Drive, which is a collector street. So we are seeing that there are opportunities for people to kind of go on to Clark from Cuesta, try and cut across El Monte, and that was resulting in a slightly higher 85th percentile speed of 29 miles per hour. And some of these numbers are really important because when you compare this street to some of the others, it's good to see the reference. 25 is the posted speed limit. 29 doesn't sound like a lot, but when you see some of the infrastructure and the comfort level and stress level that bicyclists and pedestrians experience, 29 is actually a high speed for some of these streets. So next slide. So this is Clark Avenue looking north from El Monte. And I think I did this last time where I might be saying the wrong street. So I apologize if I'm confusing the directions here. Next slide. This is at the middle part where we have the existing always stop at Hawthorne. One thing I forgot to point out in the previous slide is you will see that there is portions of an existing pedestrian pathway along the east side of Clark Avenue that start at Cuesta Drive, but aren't continuous down the whole corridor, and the condition of that pathway kind of varies along the corridor. And in this specific case, you can see that, and I would say that the pedestrian pathway needs a lot of attention. Next slide. This is again, as you're looking back towards Cuesta Drive, and you see there the pathway kind of vanishes in relation to kind of the parking that's available on the street. And so when you're walking and biking, your stress level is a lot different depending on your confidence level as a biker or a rider. Next slide. So this is the plan line drawing that we put together for Clark Avenue. A few elements to point out. Again, there is the always stop coming in at El Monte. That's the red always stop that you see. First click, please. The main thing we want to do here is you want to provide a continuous pedestrian pathway, whether that be a sidewalk facility or something like what we built on Cuesta Drive, with a like a decomposed granite pathway or a brand new asphalt pathway, something better than what's out there today, but more importantly, continuous to meet up with the facility that is already between Camilla and El Monte. So there's a continuous connection, at least on one side of the street. We are in a rural community, so we can do what we can, but it would be very difficult in this corridor to try and get some type of a pedestrian facility on both sides of the street without causing significant impacts to parking, as well as significantly impacting the cost of a project. Next click. We are proposing bike lanes for half of the street because we can fit them in between El Monte to Hawthorne, where the existing always stop is. And then next click. We would be recommending Sharrows for the southern half between Hawthorne and Cuesta Drive. Next click. You'll note here, and we got a lot of mixed reviews at this item during the community meeting. We were recommending an always stop at Benvenue and at Springer up towards the El Monte side, just to provide consistency and spacing and additional stop controls to try and kind of control the vehicle speeds on the corridor without introducing vertical deflection elements like speed humps or speed tables. And but I forgot to add the little stop circle, the stop sign octagon at Springer, but that is an element that's shown on this plan. And when we got feedback from residents on these specific recommendations, Clark Avenue over all of the other corridors during the community discussion had the most dialogue. And one of the other items that people expressed concern on was that some of the intersection returns, like at San Luis Avenue, are really wide, so cars turn fast off of Clark onto these side streets, or from the side street back onto Clark. And so we did forget to mention in the presentation, but we're showing in the drawing painted returns that could be supplemented with some other element to slow vehicles down, force vehicles to slow down as they move through an intersection. There was both support for the always stops as we had showed them at Springer and Benvenue, even though those weren't connecting streets to another street like Springer. Some people have mentioned that Paco made more sense because it was, again, a connection to Springer, but from the standpoint of spacing and width and size of intersection, people also said they thought Benvenue was better. So I think there was like 50-50 bag there. So that's something we would need to take a look at. There was a lot of interest and support for a continuous pedestrian pathway, at least on one side of the street. And there was concern regarding the existing pavement condition. And one of the reasons why this project is here is because we've already been targeting Clark Avenue as a potential street resurfacing street sometime in the next couple of years. It's beginning to show a lot of wear deterioration. So this is a really good opportunity to try and implement some complete street concept plan line visions with the resurfacing program, if we can also build in the sidewalk with that project. There was also a lot of interest in what the sidewalk would look like. I wouldn't say people hated the asphalt pathways that are there. They just wanted to know and have another opportunity to provide dialogue regarding community preferences on whether it be decomposed granite, again, concrete, asphalt, or paver kind of pathways, whatever it is. They just wanted more dialogue in that. And we clarified that that's not the level we were at, but that we would do it at an engineering phase later. Next slide. The next project we talked about was Covington Road. Covington, again, the portion between Miramonte and Grant. As a reminder, you all helped us develop the plan line drawings and helped us approve the work that was built on Covington between Miramonte all the way to the north to El Monte. So we also plan lined this last year, but we reintroduced it to the community as part of this larger complete use master plan process. So people knew that this drawing was already out there, and this was probably the second highest dialogue corridor behind Clark because of the volume activity. Covington does serve Block School, Beulah Charter, and much higher volumes compared to obviously Clark, 5,100 vehicles per day. So there's a significant difference in vehicular activity, but look at the difference alone in the bike and ped activity. A ton of kids bike and walk to Beulah, and I would say probably more focused around Block Middle School. 270 peds in the studies that we did in the morning, and another almost 120 bicycles. And this is a 25-mile-per-hour roadway with signs that say 15 mile per hour, when children are present, which a lot of people said, people in the community said motorists do not respect. And that's true. The 85th percentile on Covington was closer to 32 miles per hour. So definitely from the stress level experience that bicyclists and pedestrians experience when they're walking or biking adjacent to the vehicular lanes, the cars are coming next to them at a much faster speed. And so that stress level experience here is going to be completely different than Clark Avenue. Next slide. Quick images here. This is Covington Road looking up north towards Miramonte. You can see that there is a grade separated traditional sidewalk on the west side. But on the east side, again, pedestrians are positioning themselves as far as away as they can from the roadway, almost walking near the gutter. There is here time of day bike lanes that someone asked about, and I commented, spending a lot of time in Los Altos for work on weekends also, that I don't see very many cars parked at all on Covington Road, even during the weekend and in the evenings. And so I would say those bike lanes, even though they're time of day, they really do function as full-time bike lanes. Next slide. The only other marked crosswalks that are on Covington today are at the two schools. So at Heyman Place, at Block School, the middle school to the north, there is a marked crosswalk that I say could use a lot of additional signage and markings work, and that's something that we'll handle with this project as part of the Safe Routes to School elements. Next slide. And this is the other marked crosswalk at Thatcher across Beulah School, and same thing, a lot of opportunities to do better things with signage and markings if we did nothing else. Next slide. In this plan line drawing, we originally recommended last year to you 4 speed tables, not to the same height that we built on Cuesta Drive, because the Cuesta Drive speed tables do not function as or double as crosswalks. So because of that, we don't have the same type of ADA wheelchair accessibility restrictions that we do when we're trying to make a speed table also function as a crosswalk. So these would likely be lower in height, something closer to the existing speed table crosswalk at Grant and Morton in Los Altos and South Los Altos. That's the reference we gave to people that they could expect to see. One of the things that is different here, though, is we added the striped crosswalks across Eastwood at Covington Road, and then we also dropped in the green conflict bike zone highlights, even though it's a time of day bike lane, just to highlight that there is a lot of bike activity kind of coming in and out of there. And as a reminder, based off of the earlier slide, we are going to initiate a concept plan line process for Eastwood Drive as part of the street resurfacing program this year. So this will happen outside of the CSMP, but all get rolled in together at the end of the day. Next slide. Gordon Way is the third of the 3 corridors that we were discussing tonight with the community. Gordon Way is again located in North Los Altos. It tees directly into Los Altos High School, and then ends over at Hawthorne Avenue to the south. There's one existing all-way stop at Edith Avenue. About 1,100 vehicles per day, so comparing that as close as you can to Clark, a lower volume. But recall Clark Avenue had a 85th percentile speed of 29 miles per hour. We're seeing cars here a little faster at 31 and on a narrower street. So we didn't have bike although we don't have bike head count data, we know we're seeing slightly lower volumes compared to a street like Clark, but also vehicles interacting at higher speeds with bicycle pedestrians on a narrower roadway. Next slide. Here's a Gordon Way looking south from Almond Avenue. Next slide. And here's Gordon Avenue looking south also as you're approaching Hawthorne Avenue. So you'll see on the right here of your screen on the west side of Gordon, there is a pathway, existing asphalt pathway that exists, but it isn't continuous all the way to Almond Avenue. Next slide. So here, again, just as a reminder, there is one existing always stop at Edith. That's the only full existing control along Gordon Way. Next slide, or next click. We are recommending a new always stop at Angela Court in an effort to kind of break down and slow down vehicles as they're traveling down the roadway without having to introduce vertical elements such as speed humps and speed tables on the road. And next click. We're also recommending one at Hillview, next click, and then lastly one at Hawthorne. So Hawthorne is the southern end, but the effort here is to slow traffic down as they're entering Gordon Way from Hawthorne. And so this would provide a consistency and spacing and controls along the corridor. There is, that again, that existing in blue pedestrian pathway between Edith and Hawthorne, next click. But we're recommending to extend that all the way to Almond. And that's the orange sections of pathway that you see on the top panel versus the existing in blue on the bottom panel. Next click. We're also recommending here Sharrows up and down the corridor, and that's one in the response that we got from residents, the people that live there. We're kind of saying that, hey, maybe Sharrows, maybe that's not the greatest thing here. If we can control the corridor well with new intersection controls, maybe that the painted Sharrows may not be something that is needed, but we can, because we're adding the pathway on one side. So that's something to think about as a commission. We'd love to hear your thoughts on that later, if not tonight. Next click. The last location we presented to the community was Miramonte and Edith. This is not a corridor. This is an intersection-specific location. And along Miramonte, there is the always stop that we discussed earlier at Covington. And there's another one at Portland Avenue. Much higher vehicle volumes than any of the corridors that we looked at tonight, closer to 6,700 vehicles per day along Miramonte Avenue. We didn't have any specific bike count data, but even though it's a 25-mile-per-hour street, we're seeing vehicle speeds obviously at 35 miles per hour at what is today an uncontrolled pedestrian crossing at Berry Avenue, which services Loyola School and, of course, Block School and Bulis Charter is another alternative. Next click. This is just a Google Street View of the intersection. Again, a lot of opportunities to do even just simple signage improvements to this location. I would say this needs a lot of work, but easy things to implement that we would probably prioritize even before the completion of the Complete Streets Master Plan process. Next click. So we presented two options here. The first is to do something similar to what's at Grant and Morton Avenue in South Los Altos, the same image we showed you earlier, some type of a raised speed table that doubles as a crosswalk with perhaps a pedestrian activated flashing beacon. There was input that as part of the Miramonte discussions that took place several years ago that none of us as city staff here were involved with. A lot of community residents wrote in and commented that there was not a lot of interest in wanting to see flashing signs along Miramonte Avenue, specifically at this intersection. We also do introduce a concept of a potential always stop that, even though it's close in spacing to Portland Avenue, really wouldn't be unusual because of the amount of bicycle and pedestrian activity that takes place and the need to want to do something additional. There was a lot of comments from people saying that they loved the idea of the always stop, probably more so than the speed table, but there was also an interest in wanting to do more work like potential bulb outs to reposition the crosswalks and stops on Berry so there's a better line of sight between vehicles on Miramonte, or motorists on Miramonte and motorists on Berry Avenue. So between these two, I would say there was a little more interest in probably option 2. Next slide. That's it. That was the end of the presentation that we gave to the community. I'm going to hand it over to Jeff Knowles at Alta to reintroduce himself to you and talk a little bit about the existing conditions report in your agenda packet.
Okay, thanks, Jaime. Let me share my screen. Okay, just want to check, are you looking at the beginning of a slideshow presentation? Great, thank you, Commissioner Banerjee. All right, so thanks, everybody. Let me go to the next slide here. So the agenda tonight, I know that we're approaching, for some of us that were, if you joined us for the public meeting, I think we're hitting on passing 4 hours of continuous meetings, which is great, but I know you might be trying to fade out. So I want to make this really as exciting as possible and get any feedback that you have. And if tonight's not right, Chair, then you maybe can collect comments through written form or through Jaime. It all could come back to me and the team. So I'm going to share with you the existing conditions analysis that builds off of the work that was already done for the existing bike and ped plans that you have in place. Gather feedback. Most important to us is, does your knowledge and your experience walking and bicycling support or differ from some of the analysis that was conducted? And also here just suggestions about project locations that you want our team to investigate further before we come back to you in April with a set of recommendations. So we analyzed a couple of different pieces of data that we gathered and shared with you some maps, some tables, and just some analysis about that. The first one that we wanted to look at was demographics and equity. Who lives in Los Altos? That helps us inform areas of concentration for people that may need active transportation, non-motorized options. And the first thing that we look at is, where are there concentrations of people who are under 18 or over the age of 65? And so this map here on the right starts to get at that. The darker color in North Los Altos, and then you see in Southern Los Altos around Montclair Elementary. Those are areas where we see higher concentrations, close to 45 to 55% of the population are in those two age group categories. And so why do we care about those groups? Okay, so you have the teenagers who may not have a car, driver's license. They're really the ones that are, you know, not available to drive themselves. And then at 65 plus, the older aging population may also feel like they want other options besides getting behind the wheel of a motor vehicle. So this is important for us just to look at those concentrations and make sure that we serve those groups. Another thing we look at are the concentrations of households without access to a vehicle. So in a similar sense, for the most part, households in Los Altos do have high rates of vehicle ownership. There are a couple census tracts where you see around 2 to 5% of households don't have access to a vehicle, kind of in the downtown area. And so we would make sure that we're supporting those households with other alternative means of transportation. Good options. We look at median household income, another equity factor in how, you know, making sure that the network meets the needs of people that have other needs. And so this shows that you've got a fairly high median household income compared to the region and the state, but we also wanted to look into that and update that from the last set of plans. And the last piece of information that we looked at in terms of demographics and equity was the state Cal Enviro Screen 3.0, which is an amalgamation of 20 different indicators that look at pollution burden and population characteristics. And the reason that we look at this is it's just another measure for equity that the state uses, but it also is one of the metrics that is used to hand out state dollars for active transportation funding through the ATP program. And so we wanted to at least run this analysis, update it to the most recent data that's available, and see if there were any pockets that might be more eligible for grant funding at the statewide level. And so this basically is a map that just confirms that the whole city and surrounding area is in a higher bracket, so less pollution burden, population characteristics that have fewer sensitive populations. We looked at your land use plan to make sure that this is consistent and updated. And so for us, it's where is there higher demand for walking and bicycling based off of your land use designations. So making sure that we have close identification of where your schools are, or your commercial areas where we probably would see more demand for walking. So, along frontages on Foothill Expressway, the downtown, El Camino Real. Parks, of course, we wanted to look at that. And then where are those proximities of where people live near those high demand destinations for walking or bicycling. An important update from the last 2 plans was just looking at your employment and commute patterns. So this map is a number of jobs per square mile. And I think anybody, these aren't labeled, but I think it's pretty clear. You can see Stanford here. You can see Apple's campus, Google's campus, the downtown area of Los Altos. And then you can also see Foothill College, which is just across your border there. In terms of numbers of people that are commuting, and we know that commuting doesn't represent the entire universe of trips that are taken, but it is the one that has the best data available. And so this is a proxy for different types of commute patterns or activity patterns. 78% of Los Altos residents drove alone, 5.5%, 5.7% carpooled. You do have a 3.3% of people using active modes to get as their primary mode to get to work. And so that's an area where we want to look at improving. So where are those jobs? Where do people live? And can we make it easier for them to use walking or bicycling as an option? Also transit, how many people can walk or bike to the closest transit line to get to their job? Those are the things that we'll be looking at as we're developing recommendations. And finally, we looked at the bicycling and walking conditions as they exist today. And so this is a map that was shared last week. It's the existing bicycle network. And so the thing that we're going to be looking at this and evaluating is it connected, convenient, and comfortable? So connected, are there gaps in the network that need to be filled? Is it convenient? Is the coverage good so that people can easily access a bike facility? And is it comfortable? Do the facilities themselves match what we know more users need to feel comfortable on them? So looking at where there are bike lanes, can those be improved to be buffered bike lanes or separated bike lanes if there's room available? For your bike route network, can that be expanded to make sure that we're connecting all of the lanes together? Can they be improved with bike boulevard treatments like you're looking at with some of these concept plan line drawings? All that's going to be evaluated in terms of recommendations for improving this network. In terms of comfort, we also want to know where people are getting hit. And so, we updated your numbers from 2015 to 2019. It's the most recent 5 years that are available to us. What we recognized is that in the last 5 years, there were a total of 422 collisions with motor vehicles. Of those collisions, 90 involved a bicyclist and 31 involved a pedestrian. And 11 of those crashes involved a severe injury or a death. So we see bicycle collisions are concentrated along some of your major corridors like Granger, Edith, San Antonio, Portland, and Fremont. What we'll be looking at is, can we upgrade some of these facilities, these bike facilities, with more buffers or more physical separation? And we'll also look at traffic calming measures. We also looked deeper into not just the locations and the prevalence. So this map is really looking at those clusters. So where there's 1, 2, or 3 within close proximity. But we're also looking at the behaviors that led to those collisions, both on the part of the motorist and if there was any fault of the bicyclist or pedestrian. And so we're looking at those to make sure that we match the facility or the treatment to the behavior that led to those collisions. Many of the bicycle involved collisions were due to a violation of the automobile right-of-way, unsafe speeds, and improper turning. And this was both fault of motorist and bicyclist to some degree. Pedestrian collisions, this map here is the number of pedestrian collisions. So fewer, 31 compared to 90 on the bicycle side. There were 2 fatalities, pedestrian fatalities, one in the downtown area and one just off of El Camino Real. So we'll be looking really closely at certainly those severe and fatal injury locations to see what we can do to address those. Especially, you see I think it's a lot of pedestrian activity in your downtown, but also certainly the prevalence of collisions, that and El Camino Real. So some feedback, which again can happen this evening, or by, you can write into the chair or to Jaime directly, and we'll get that, is, does your knowledge and experience walking, bicycling support or differ from some of this analysis? And also just hear your suggestions about specific project locations that also should investigate further. That again can be done through comments tonight or through the interactive online map. I saw that Steve Katz, Commissioner Katz, already has entered in a comment. Using that tool, that also goes to us directly. So there's a lot of different ways that you can provide feedback to us. And finally, next steps, just want to reiterate that we'll be back in April to share proposed improvements and project lists. In June, we'll share prioritization of how to rank those projects. And over the summer, we'll have a draft plan. So you'll again have opportunities to provide feedback. And then we'll hope to go to council in the fall. And Jaime mentioned this before, but LosAltosCompleteStreets.com, we appreciate all the feedback we got from last week. We made a lot of changes to the website, updated it, fixed a lot of link issues, and hopefully it's running well. We've made a lot of upgrades to that, but if you see anything else that needs to be changed, please again reach out. We'll make those as quickly as possible.
Great, thank you, Jeff. All right, so there'll be no more discussion on this item, and that concludes item number 4. Can we send a text to Commissioners Zambiel and Suresh, please, to return back to the Commission's meeting?
Yes, I'll do that right now.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I think I'm going to suggest that we move item 6 ahead of 5. Let's wait for Suzanne and Suresh to be back.
Yeah, I'm going to ask the commissioners. I don't know if the phone number that Suzanne gave us in the
yeah, I have. I got her number. I texted her. She's coming.
There you go. Yeah, I already texted Suresh too. So
yeah.
Yeah. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jeff. Thank you, Jaime.
Thanks, Jeff. You can cut out, man. We'll catch up with you later.
Pleasure to be here. Thanks, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Whoever is Moto E5, can you please mute? Thank you. All right, let's give Suresh and Suzanne a few moments. Actually, you know what? Since we have quorum, let's go ahead and get started anyway. Any objection to move item 6 ahead of 5? No, I see heads shaking, so I'll take it as an okay. All right, so let's go ahead and do that. Who's going to lead the discussion on that?
Gaku or Kathy, I think you guys might have that graphic, and I'm going to let you walk the commission through that. It's just the one map. If you could pull that up, Gaku. Why don't you go ahead and introduce the discussion topic. We want to make sure we offer as many opportunities to our young engineers to interact with the commission as possible. And so this is a great project.
We're doing number 6?
Yes, number 6.
Number 6 is city council priorities.
Sorry, I'm doing that one, I guess.
All right, so let me actually, before you start, I think for the benefit of the rest of the commissioners, you should have had in your packets a letter that will be coming out from the commission to city council for their consideration at the retreat this weekend. So hopefully that should be a fairly efficient conversation. You've had the chance to review the letter. If you have any more comments to add or amendments, that's the time to do it. Let's try to keep it very productive in the next few minutes for that conclusion. Go ahead, Jaime.
Okay, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Okay.
Let's not go through the letter, line by line, please. That is incredibly inefficient.
That's not my intention. I was just going to do a quick high-level note that the draft letter, like the chair mentioned, is in your agenda packet. Hopefully you have had a chance to read it. We basically, in the letter, are summarizing the 3 commission priorities that you already reviewed and discussed at your previous meeting last month, and that we're going to discuss a little later on tonight. But the letter includes the cover letter itself that would be signed by the chair, and then in it we've included the draft work plan, which we'll also discuss later this evening. And this version of the work plan includes some of the programs and projects and KPIs that you guys asked for at your last meeting in December. So this work plan has that, and we attached it as a reference to the city council. So when they go through the priority session, they see the level of effort and kind of why this commission developed its 3 priorities the way that it did. And that's the end of my presentation, Chair. Stacy, did you want to mention anything? I think you also helped in with the letter review. Do you want to say anything?
Yeah, no, thank you for the opportunity, Jaime. I think mostly for my fellow commissioners, I did work on the draft of the letter, so I'm just kind of standing up by to take any feedback that anyone has, and then I can work on edits tomorrow morning and get these to staff so it can get sent to city council. The only other thing that I would say is as Jaime mentioned, since the last time the work plan details had come before here, some KPIs have been added. This commission hasn't discussed those, and those are high-level KPIs at this point. I would actually envision, if the chair agrees, the subcommittee continuing to work with staff to detail and refine some of those KPIs, bring them back to this commission before we have our spring May 4th joint session with council. So we have further discussion on those. But I think the subcommittee, or at least myself, and I'll speak for you too, Jaime, I think we felt it was important to put some initial KPIs in here when it went to city council, because they start establishing timeline ideas, and we want to give council the expectation that everything in this work plan is not getting done in 1 year.
So let me clarify something. Thank you, by the way, to Stacy and to Cindy and Jaime for working. The objective of this letter is to make sure that when city council meets this coming weekend and they work on their priorities and what we recommend as our priorities are in perfect alignment. And that sets the stage, therefore, for the joint meeting between our commission and city council in May to dive deeper into what would be the KPIs. So Stacy is right in the sense that there's more work for the subcommittee to do in the next several weeks to kind of put more substance and details behind the KPIs. But the purpose of this letter is to make sure that we're not diverging from where city council is setting their priorities. So to that extent, I don't want to sort of ask the commission to dive into the minutiae of every word and the grammar and the style, but more to really look at the content and make sure that we are, as a commission, are in alignment as to what the priorities are in that letter. And then we feel that this letter does represent what we as a commission feel should be our priorities. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to anyone who wishes to comment. And we're still waiting for, okay, I see Suzanne is on board. I don't see Suresh.
I'll try bringing him again. I already sent him a couple of texts. I'll try one more time.
So any comments, or you can just simply say that we agree with the letter and that's all good, or if you have any more comments, please feel free to state them. Okay, Suzanne gives me a thumbs up.
I have a comment, I guess. I know and thank you, Stacy drafted the letter as part of the work plan, but she put together the letter with Jaime. I think we said that the KPIs are like kind of placeholders, and one comment or comment I had or observation from our previous meeting. And then I wasn't sure how to follow up and share my thought because I didn't want to get caught in Brown Act. But in how we define the KPIs, there's a little bit of conflict between like what city council and what our commission should consider what our goals are, what our vision is, and how we want to measure that success by. And that's in conflict with, you know, Jaime as a consultant or our sub, you know, the groups that we bring in and contract our work out to, who are on the hook to deliver. And so their KPIs are very much implementation focused, and so the question is, how do we balance that in, you know, in our work plan, and how do we reflect that so that we're all on board, all the different parties are on board with the KPIs we're trying to achieve.
So how would you suggest that to balance the KPIs?
Yeah, and well, so the question, I guess, to the commissioner, other commissioners, is the KPIs in the work plan, do we think that they are reflective of like the projects and the implementation KPIs, or is it focused on like the outcomes that we're trying to achieve by completing those projects? So that's the question that we have, and then that I'm asking the group, and then that would inform whether we have the appropriate KPIs. And I think some of these here are a mix. Some of them are very implementation focused, like if we complete the project, that's a success, but why are we completing that success? And maybe that doesn't matter and doesn't need to be in this work plan, but that's just the framing question.
Sure. Look, it's a good question. My experience here is I think there should be two separate set of KPIs between the commission and staff. I mean, they're driven by the same objectives, they're driven by the same overall arching missions and priorities, but the KPIs are going to be different. We as a commission, we're not implementing projects. We're here as an advisory body, therefore we're going to be driven by a different set of metrics and self-measured KPIs vis-a-vis what we want to tell city council. Of course, staff is going to be driven by project completions and timelines and what have you, and budgets. So I think I'm going to encourage a subcommittee here to sort of look at, we as a subcommittee, how should we measure ourselves? And I think we should discourage ourselves to just to be tempted to go deep into the project. That's what staff needs to be doing. We should be kind of say, as an advisory body, how do we measure our outputs? How do we think about the bigger picture? How do we think about priorities that are relevant to the rest of the community, to the whole city? How do we encourage whatever the things that we want to encourage, whether it's more bike commuting or less traffic or whatever that may be? That's how I would advise that we think about it. But certainly everybody should chime in on that. Suzanne, please go ahead.
I think you have a valid point, Nadeem, but I think Cindy, Commissioner Oyang has points as well. When you look at what we've got in front of us, we've got some very specific things that are implementation oriented, complete 19 concept plan line drawings. That's not our KPI. Our KPI should be to review those and hold community meetings with respect to them, but we should not complete those drawings. That's a staff duty, not ours, my opinion. Same thing with the walk and roll maps. Again, we can't draw the maps, the city can. We can advise and help with coordinating those school meetings to discuss them, but we can't complete them. So I think we need to be very careful, Chair, as you articulated. The city has specific KPIs that are tactically and execution oriented. Ours are quite different. So we can advise about selecting a minimum of 2 streets, but we can't choose them, really. That's staff. So we need to be very careful about kind of what side of the line we land on.
Yeah, that's correct. That's a very important point to emphasize here. And again, I think we don't want to be redundant either, right? I mean, we do have a staff of professional engineers who understand engineering way better than we do. Our role is to provide input as members of this community and sort of see how those projects fit within our community. So it is a complementary advisory role, and we shouldn't really be overlapping those two functions.
Yeah, so I guess maybe the ask to ask is then we probably need to revise some of those KPIs, which we already said these are placeholders. But so I don't want to derail. The original question is like the content of the letter I'm on board with,
Yeah. And again, look, I mean, this is a letter to City Council, and we should expect some feedback from City Council. We would expect feedback. They might come back and say some priorities do match and others perhaps don't, or they might adopt our priorities and sort of say we like that, go for it. In which case, then we'll have the chance to refine those KPIs. But that's sort of the first framework of a discussion with City Council to make sure that we are at a higher level, are we aligned on the priorities.
So if I may just play things back, as we noted when we kicked things off, the subcommittee hasn't really dug into the KPIs at any great detail. So this was helpful feedback from everyone here. I haven't, if I'm not mistaken, I haven't heard any objection to just, because this letter has to be sent tomorrow, objection, there's two choices. One is to generally leave what the KPIs that are here now as placeholders with our attachment to City Council, so they kind of get some rough sense of timelines and what's trying to be accomplished. Or the other option is just completely remove the KPIs for now and just list the kind of priorities.
Stacey, I'm going to basically ask the commission here, is anyone objecting to the letter the way it is right now? I don't see any objections, Stacey, with the letter. So I think it sounds like last call. Any objections before?
So it's the letter and then the priorities and KPI document goes as an attachment.
The letter, the way it stands right now, the way it is in the packet. Okay.
I would advise removing the KPIs. I think the council could get derailed by the KPIs. So I would advocate for removing the KPIs from our proposed 5-year work plan.
Okay, so we have one recommendation to remove the KPIs. Anyone else supports that recommendation? Okay, Suresh does. Fantastic. Anyone else? Okay.
Yeah, it's fine for me.
Commissioners. All right. Anyone else who objects to removing the KPIs? All right. I don't see anyone violently. So it sounds like let's remove the KPIs in that case. Yeah.
That's not a problem. I can do that, Chair, and I can email you the document later this evening with the letter and the work plan with the KPIs removed, and we just need a signature, and then we
I
can
will do so. Please send us a PDF, and I'm happy to sign it.
Will do. Thank you.
Great, thank you. All right, that was efficient.
Chair, may I ask a quick question?
Yes, of course.
Jim here. I just want to make sure I understand the sequence of events tomorrow. Are you emailing it to me, Stacey, or
so I just heard Jaime is going to email it to Nadim so Nadim could sign the letter. Is that right? And
yes.
Then from Nadim, I guess it goes back to where?
I'm going to send it back to Jim.
Okay. I just want to know that I need to look for this.
Yes, you should have a signed letter in your inbox no later than tomorrow.
Okay, great.
And then Jim, you have the ball to make sure it's fully submitted to City Council and wherever.
Yeah, I'll send it to the city clerk and the city manager. And
okay.
Okay, beautiful. Great. So now let's move to item number 5. And I'm looking forward to Gaku taking over the podium. Cindy, go ahead.
Yeah, so if it's the Fremont Avenue one, I think I recused myself from the previous discussions. So should I, consistency.
Yeah, okay. Can you please leave your phone number, mobile number with Jaime so he can text you?
Yeah, Jaime has it.
Okay, very well. Okay. Thanks. All right. Well, I'm glad we're not losing everybody for one project. Okay.
So for Fremont Avenue, Kathy Kim, our assistant engineer, is going to walk us through this item. So Kathy, I'll hand it over to you.
Perfect. Thank you, Jaime, and thank you, Chair. Gaku, do you mind sharing this slides for me? Perfect. All right, I'll do a quick introduction of myself in case anyone, if I haven't met everyone yet. So I'm assistant engineer in transportation division. I'm working with Jaime, Gaku, and Jim. And this item is Fremont Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation Project. All right, so this item is to provide an update on the Fremont Avenue Pavement Rehabilitation Project. And the project is to resurface Fremont Avenue from Grant Road to Stevens Creek Bridge within the city limits. So to give a brief background, this project began back in fall 2019. with Bellici and Associates as the design consultant. And since then, we brought this item to commission and a couple times, and then we held public outreach meetings a few times. And we also conducted online survey last fall. And I think about like 250 people participated and provided their inputs. And we received the final design a few weeks ago. And then the payment treatment is still the same as what we discussed before. We will have the traditional method of dig outs with asphalt overlay as the base bid, and we'll have the cold in place recycling method as alternate bid. And for those who's here for the first time about this project, the cold in replace method is a newer method than the traditional method of dig outs and AC overlay, but it's proven effective in the industry. It's a better product with a longer life expectancy. Also, it's more environmental friendly, but then the downside is about like 10 to 20% higher cost than the traditional method. So one of the question on the online survey was to see if people are in favor of spending extra money for the cold in replace recycling. And about 70% of the people responded saying yes. And, oh, sorry, slides are still stuck. Gaku, do you mind going to the next slide? Okay, and then for the treatment repair option, the final treatment will be chosen after we receive the prices for the base option and the adult option. So if we get the reasonable price for the cold in replace recycling, we may be we may prefer that one instead of the traditional dig out and the AC overlay. All right, so this is the revised striping and signage plan. You saw the previous revision, version back in September. There were some changes that we made based on the comments and the online survey inputs that public provided. All right, so the first change was that we added some green bike zones at the areas where the bike buffer reduces. So for the most part of the project corridor, we have a consistent 11 feet wide travel bike lanes with and the 11 foot wide vehicle travel lanes and 6 foot wide bike lanes with 3 foot buffer. But there are some areas where the bike buffer reduces down, which is at like Montebello Oaks Court. Gaku, if you can kind of hover over that location. And there are some, and the other location, yeah. So you see the green bike lane about 60 foot long, going eastbound on the left side. Right before the Montebello Oaks Court. Going eastbound. There you go. Yeah, so we added that 60 foot of green bike zone to alert the drivers that since the bike buffer is reducing from the both side. And there's other location right before the bridge at Stevens Creek. I think that's on the next page, Gaku. Going eastbound. There, the bike buffer chokes down as we approach the bridge, and we added the green bike zone there. It's bottom right. And another change that we made was the flexible vertical post. So in the previous version, there was a white flexible post shown in the design. Based on the online survey, about 55 people responding saying that they did not want the raised element. And we heard some comments from the commission that those get hit by the cars and they don't look very good. And it sounds like they weren't really the preferred option on the Almond Avenue. So we took them out in response to the comments. Another change that we made was the green conflict zones right before the intersections. So we shortened them at the less busy intersections. So at Truman, they're only about 60, and usually we had 100 feet wide, 100 feet long conflict zones at every location, intersections. So Truman is one of them. Fallen Leaf, a lot of the midsection of the Fremont intersection were reduced from 100 to 60 or 75. And Gaku, do you mind going to the next page? Right, alternate concepts. So the following two alternate concepts are from the list of future improvements that was collected from the online survey. Initially, we just wanted to collect inputs on the potential complete streets element to implement in future projects, but staff took initiative and prepared exhibits for following two alternate concepts to the final design. So first one is the high visibility crosswalk at Fallen Leaf. We got some comments on online survey that they wanted to see a pedestrian improvement at Fallen Leaf and potentially adding a crosswalk there. So in response to that, we added the high visibility crosswalk on the west side of the Fallen Leaf intersection. And if the ADA requirements are satisfied and the budget allow, we look to implement it in this current project. Next page, please. All right, next alternate concept is the pedestrian improvement near the pedestrian pathway improvement at the Stevens Creek Bridge. So we also got comments to improve the existing pedestrian pathway on the north side of the Fremont Avenue. Currently, near the Stevens Creek Bridge, there is an AC pathway that's shared by both pedestrians and the cyclists. And right now, the bike lane on the east side of the bridge, there's an existing bike lane on Sunnyvale side. And once the bike lane approaches the bridge, it leads the cyclists onto the bridge and use the AC pathway with pedestrians. And this proposed alternate concept will introduce separate bikeway, which will go around the bridge and continues on Fremont Avenue and then connects with the existing bridge and existing bike lane about 200 feet before the Fallen Leaf lane. So this way we can have a separate pathway for bicycle and pedestrians. Next, please. All right, so that's all I have for the presentation. Sorry, I also wanted to go over the schedule real quick. So right now we're waiting for the approval from Caltrans for the federal grant that we're receiving for the project. And once we get the authorization from Caltrans, we'll advertise the project out to bid and then hopefully start the construction in summer 2021.
Great, thank you, Kathy. Great job, thank you. Any questions for Kathy? Suzanne, go ahead, please.
Thank you. For your alternate concept one on the high visibility crosswalk at Fallen Leaf Lane, can you tell me what design element makes this a high visibility crosswalk? I don't understand what makes this more visible than a different one. Is it elevated? Is it painted differently? Help me out.
Yeah, so it's the same type of crosswalk that's proposed at different locations within this project. I think, Jaime, correct me if I'm wrong, but the high visibility crosswalk uses a thermoplastic with more reflectives in the paint. Is that correct?
That's right. So when we're referencing high visibility crosswalks, that means that it's just not your standard traditional parallel bars. It has that kind of step ladder kind of concept layout. We also use high visibility yellow-green signage at the crosswalk itself, both on the sides and in the middle of the street. And then we're also using the reflector posts, kind of yellow element as well, just to make sure that people really see that motorists really see the crosswalk, regardless of whether or not there's pedestrians, that they know they're approaching a crossing.
Thank you. That helps me out. Second question. You have your alternate concept at the bridge. I couldn't follow your instructions about what had changed north, south, east, west. I'm a mess. Can you go through that again and with your red highlighter show me exactly what's changed on slide 5 that's different than last time?
Yeah.
I can pull up a real quick existing aerial if you want me to, Kathy. That way, the people can see the difference.
Yeah, sounds good.
That would be great. Thank you very much. Just couldn't tell where you're changing the pathway coming off the bridge or to the bridge.
I'm going to go ahead and share the screen, okay, Kathy? And then Gaga, you can go back when she's ready. So here is Fremont Avenue at Stevens Creek, generally
Yes.
here, and at Belleville Way. So you
Bellevue, yes.
you want to walk them through that, Kathy?
Yeah, so on the east side of the Bellevue Way is the Sunnyvale jurisdiction. I don't know if you can see it, but behind that buffer, there's an existing bike lane.
Okay.
Westbound. The bike lane continues just before the bridge.
Yes.
It's right there. And cyclists are forced into the, led into the bridge where it's shared by the pedestrian.
I see. Okay. So are you proposing that instead you route them onto the street?
Yeah, so there will be a separate bike lane on the roadway around the bridge.
Okay. So the bikes will no longer ride on the bridge. You'll consume part of the roadway, that merging lane, in as a bike lane. Am I understanding you correctly?
Yes.
Okay.
In
Thank
the,
you.
in the original design, Suzanne, the bike lane didn't actually begin until after the bridge.
Right.
And this just makes it continuous from the Sunnyvale side over the bridge.
Thank you. That's very helpful for me. I wasn't sure if I was understanding the correct side of the street. Thank you for the clarification. And then one last verification. You said that this project will be done and will begin work in 2022 or 2021. I'm not sure if I heard you correctly.
2021.
2021, this summer, we hope the project will begin, correct?
Yes, this depends on the Caltrans approval that we're waiting on.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. That's all my questions.
Great. Any further questions? Vice Chair, go ahead, please.
Oh, thank you. I actually want to extend upon one of Suzanne's questions about when you're entering into Los Altos there by that bridge. So this is an area where I ride a lot. So when you move the bicycle traffic into that merge lane where the vehicle traffic is, what is going to be, because the cars coming in, merging are coming in, you know, in Sunnyvale where it's much more dense, or they're coming off of 85. So I support, in general, moving the bikes in there, and I'm glad you put green paint for the conflict. But if I saw those visuals right, and maybe you can bring them back up, there's no longer going to be a bike buffer as there is painted buffer as there is through the bike lanes through the rest of the corridor. Is that right?
There is some buffer there. Kaka, do you mind bringing up the plans again? Or I can do it myself. Give me 1 second.
Because I think the real concern I'm bringing up is vehicles are rushing in there at a high speed, and they're just kind of forced into a merge. And if the bicycles are going to be right there with the young kids, I just want to make sure we have enough protection in place.
Yeah, so there is buffer about the dimensions not shown, but we use that merge area as a bike to provide the buffer for the bike lane.
Oh, okay, good. Maybe I just didn't. Maybe I didn't see that before on the one that had just the green paint, and I saw 18 feet vehicle, and I was like, whoa. And then another question: as the cyclists right at this location are going out of Los Altos, I know you have some green paint by the bridge there, but what happens when they hit up to Belleville here? And that's kind of a crazy past the trees where that truck is. Where it divides into a left turn, 2 straight aheads, and a right hand turn. That's kind of wild in there. Is there any way we can extend? I don't know if that's Sunnyvale's jurisdiction or ours. No, it's to the right, Kathy, of this image. You need to go.
So I think this is where the
border is.
Yeah, border is.
Is
right.
it possible for us to talk to Sunnyvale and see if we can work on getting some green paint? I don't know if they'll let us do it as part of this project or if we have to try to get them to do it. But right into that intersection on Fremont and Belleville.
Yeah, we can certainly talk to the staff from Sunnyvale to see if there's any improvements that can be made at that location.
Yeah, that would be great, because when vehicles have a path of 4 places, it's challenged for the bicycle. Another question that I have, and I missed the meeting in September, so maybe you guys already covered this. For the intersection of Truman and Fremont, and I'm not necessarily asking for this, I'm just wondering, you know, what happened to it. There was a CIP project at one point that included adding flashing beacons there. Is that happening? Is that not happening? If not, why not?
Yeah, I can try to respond to that. When we went through the CIP process, I think it was about a year ago now, Jim. Maybe it might have been in the spring. For the CIP that we're in now, if you recall, there was a series of projects that we deferred funding for, not necessarily canceled or removed out of the CIP. The projects were just deferred. That was one of the projects that was deferred, and so it isn't a project that we're doing at this time, just because it's deferred.
Okay, so it's still something that's deferred. It's not something you're canceling. And I'm not advocating one way for another.
That's correct. Yeah, we actually had that discussion where that deferral meant not cancel, meant just not funded.
Okay. And was that presented at the last community when this was brought back before last time with the community?
That specifically wasn't brought up. Nobody asked. We just had the previous discussions at the commission as part of that CIP funding. That was probably going on a year now.
Okay. And then on the bike lanes, Kathy, did I understand you right? I looked in the presentation from the September meeting that I missed, and I read in there that there was going to be some flexi post in the buffers in a few critical locations. Did I just hear you say that we're no longer doing that?
Yeah, so they were initially proposed in the previous version, but after the September community meeting and the commission meeting, we took them out.
Okay, and just a question, at that September community meeting, were there lots of young families there, or was it more the elderly demographic of residents there? Do you happen to know by chance? And I'm only asking because I got a lot of feedback from young families who want things in the buffer, physical things in the buffer zone.
Yeah, I'm not too sure about the demographics of attendees, but I could reach out to Belici, who conducted the online survey, to see if there was a question regarding demographic in the survey.
Yeah. Okay, that's a good idea. I'm not sure that we put a demographic question in there, which if we didn't, that's a good point for us for the future, is to put demographic questions.
Stacey, I can try to ping in a little bit because, I was part of all those presentations as well. So I think when it came to Fremont Avenue, a lot of the comments you heard earlier tonight for Almond Avenue about kind of the vertical elements and kind of preserving kind of the rural look and feel of the community, a lot of those similar kind of comments and kind of tones were shared at that meeting. The rest of the project, nobody really had a problem with. Everybody was really excited just to get the project street resurfaced, and we're in general large support of the drawings that you're seeing tonight. It was really just the vertical element that a lot of the almost everybody, with the exception of some of the people that were here from Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition, where most everybody else was not in support of. And so I think we went ahead and just recommended to remove them as a result of the community input.
Yeah, I think that's helpful, Jaime, and I know this is the question period, not the comment period, but I think what I'm suggesting is maybe next time around when we do a survey, we should get demographics of people who are taking the survey, because I'm not sure when we do our community meetings, if we're getting a lot of young families and school-age families who are showing up to give us feedback, but they may, because they're busy, they may be more inclined to take a survey. So I just want to make sure we're getting feedback from everyone. Yeah. I think those are my major questions. Thank you.
I have a comment, if I may.
Go ahead, Jim.
Stacey's question about the Fremont-Truman intersection project. That's actually funded with traffic impact fees, and so it wasn't necessarily deferred. I remember this conversation at the council meeting. Former council member Bruins was very adamant that that's not a school crossing, and so it was kind of left up in the air. Certainly in the future we can bring it back to you and decide how we want to address it, because we do have funding for that, and then we can certainly take it to the council when it's a project.
Yeah, and I don't know, Jim, if because long ago I asked if it was going to be part of this, and I was under the impression that it would, and it would have been a really good time to get feedback from the community on it. So
Yeah, it was. I mean, I know Councilmember Bruins was very involved in the Fremont Avenue process and attended some of the community meetings, and so that was kind of a point that she kept emphasizing. So, you know, maybe we can revisit that.
I just a quick note that we do not have the opportunity to bring it back into this project because we've already outlined the project elements with Caltrans through that environmental review process they're doing, and we were clear that we weren't digging down for construction of pole foundations. So definitely, I think, like Jim said, we can always bring it back if there's a lot of interest in doing it, but it would have to be done as a separate project outside of the resurfacing, likely after the resurfacing project.
yeah, that's fine. And as I said, I'm not really advocating for it one way or another. I'm asking what happened to it and what have we told the community about it. And it sounds like we didn't get any input unprompted input asking for it either. So I don't think we should go ahead unless we get input from the community that they want it. But I think it's just in the CIP, so we should do something with it, either take it out or do something. That's all in the future.
Okay, any further questions or comments? Steve, go ahead, please. You're muted. Steve, you're muted. Unmute.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
So Kathy or Jaime, I was not at the September meeting. How does the bike lane transition when it crosses Grant Road, continuing on Fremont to Loyola Corner? And how does it transition if you turn onto Grant Road? Is it going to be completely different after this project is done? Once it transitions, or will there be some continuity?
So physically, there'll be a difference. Well, let me take that back. We are adding in, I'm going to share my screen real quick just to make the point here. Here's a Google aerial of the intersection. And you see that there's already some green elements on the west side of Fremont Avenue at Grant Road. We're introducing green elements on the east side that aren't there today. So there'll be a similar look and feel to what's existing on the west side to what we're building on the east side. But this project doesn't specifically create any modifications to the existing striping on the west side of the project. Does that answer your question?
Yes. Thank you.
Okay.
So if may I take another turn? Thank
Yes,
you.
of course. Of
September
course.
meeting, and this one is this road I use a lot. So to add on to what Commissioner Katz has just said, is I think we need to think about, when we do a project, our project boundaries. If we have two projects and they have boundaries like this, and then another project boundaries like that, how do two projects intersect? And we need to make sure that we have contiguous plans across two project boundaries. So if I take the intersection of Fremont with Grant Road, for example, that's a really good intersection. I think that this project plan, as I looked at it, if I understand it correctly, it's made some good plans for cyclists to continue straight ahead on Fremont towards Loyola Corners. But for cyclists who are making a right-hand turn onto Grant, there is basically immediately as you turn right, the bike lane disappears for a few critical yards. And that's where all the vehicles that were waiting at the light with the cyclists, they're now trying to aggressively go by and squeeze by. And I don't know if there's some green paint or some bicycle delineation that we could put in there as well too, because it's a big conflict zone.
We could definitely take a look at that. Stacy. I think that's a real reasonable request.
Thank you, Jaime. I'd appreciate it. It's like I've heard young families who don't want to ride down Grant Road, going to other destinations, and this is one of the two primary reasons why. So thank you.
I've spent more time at this intersection than any other location across the whole city. I can tell you, it is busy, like all the time with bikes. Like it's crazy.
Yeah. So, and I agree, the intersection is busy with bikes, vehicles, everything. And Fremont is busy because it's a cut through to 85. Is there a way on some of the busiest intersections on this corridor we're working on now on Fremont to do tighter intersection returns, like places like Austin, Newcastle, Truman, Fallen Leaf, for example? Because we have those wide, it comes up to the corner and the shoulder striping goes out wide, and then the vehicles tend to go way over to the side as they approach Fremont Avenue. So I don't know if there's a way to consider tighter returns.
Kathy, remind me, I thought we talked about that with Belleci and during the design. And one of the concerns that came up was as part of doing that was what is the continuity of an actual pedestrian facility and whether or not you striped crosswalks across them. Because I originally asked for that when the project started, but we got input from some of the city staff that if we were to look at that type of a treatment, it would introduce a different level of ADA accessibility for wheelchairs and slopes of the road. And that caused such a complicated, it made us kind of eliminate that element from the project. So my initial thought is if we were just striping paint, which we did, I think at Truman 2 years ago or a year and a half ago, maybe that's different, but I know when it came to the wanting to look at the continuity as part of tighter returns painted with crosswalks, the consensus was that it wasn't something we could do with the project.
Okay, so I got it. So I think if there's places where there aren't crosswalks, then maybe take a look at it. But I know we're looking at, I think the places I mentioned, Truman and Fallen Leaf have crosswalks, but I don't think Austin and I can't remember if Newcastle, I don't think does. So
the other part too, Stacy, is that really wasn't brought up by anybody in the community either. They really didn't seem to be concerned about that.
Yeah, I don't think.
So I'm a little hesitant to make a significant change like that because it would be different than what people saw previously, and so it may just be that as great of an idea as it is, it may just be it's too late for that already.
Okay, understood.
In the interest of time, I want to make sure that we're kind of more efficient in the use of time. So
yeah. No, that's perfect. I think I was just going to say, Jaime, maybe we can consider that for future projects. And then one last quick thing, and thank you. So when we look at the crosswalks at Fallen Leaf, and there was one other one, Truman, we just have them crosswalks across Fremont. Is there a way that we can also put it across Fallen Leaf? So we have a crosswalk like this and a crosswalk like this, and the same on Truman.
That's what I just mentioned earlier. It's like a minute ago that when we looked at that,
that's
an issue of the ADA accessibility wheelchairs. But more importantly, was the ongoing continuity of a pedestrian pathway that really wasn't an opportunity for this project.
Okay, thank you.
Good. All right. Any last comments? What you're looking for here, Jaime, is just comments, right? No, just feedback. You're on mute.
We're looking for comments, but I think one of the biggest thing is we really are interested on the two alternatives. I'm hearing people seem to like the bike path at the Stevens Creek Bridge, but specifically to the proposed crosswalk at Truman. We don't spend a lot of time out there. Is that where are we putting the crosswalk on the right side of the intersection? If we have to put one, we put it on the west. Should it be on the east? Does the concept in general look okay to the commission? We're really looking for that one intersection.
Can we put that drawing back on the screen, please, and let's make sure that we get all the feedback from the commission that you need specific to that.
Kathy Agaku, can you do that?
Crossing.
Yes, give me 1 second.
I run out of steam, guys. I'm like, I hate going down.
Yeah.
Can you see?
Yeah, we can see it. All right, can we give Jaime and Kathy some feedback here? This is on this crosswalk specifically, please.
I have no feedback. My questions were answered, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, great. Rest of the commissioners, any feedback? You okay with it?
I'm okay with it. I think the only feedback I have, and the reason I was asking about the possibility to put the crosswalks across the other ways, and I know Jaime said we have ADA issues, is because then when people approach the intersection as a pedestrian, they have a way to walk across.
So I think Jaime, as a request for the future, when the packets go out like that, if you think there's one specific item that you want some feedback, just put it as a front page, please, and then just big bold letters and say, I need you to fill in the blanks. Okay. Thank you. All right, so I think we've got all the feedback that you need here. If there are no last minute comments, I'm going to move to item number 7.
I'll go ahead and text Cindy and Tom. They can come back. Whew. Okay, message is sent.
This is item 7 coming up.
Yeah.
For the pavement program.
Yeah, and that should be informational too, right? That's sort of, we've covered a lot of that
Oh,
stuff.
sorry, I just went to get water. Am I up for number 7?
Yeah, you're getting ready.
Sorry about that. I went to get some water.
So if I may just make a statement before you start number 7, this is a citywide project, but applying the advice that I've gotten from the assistant city manager and the city attorney in the past for a citywide project, when it lists a location that's within the radius of my residence, I'm allowed to participate in the conversation. I'm allowed to support staff recommendations, but not add anything that's right by my residence, but support what they've put forward. And then if it's ever comes up as a specific item by my residents, I will then recuse myself if that's ever on the agenda, or when and if it is.
Correct. That's correct.
Did I get it right, Jaime?
Yes, you did. It's perfect, actually.
Cool. Okay. All right. Let's go ahead and move to item number 7. Gaku, you're up next.
Okay. Item number 7 is the city's resurfacing program for 2021. What we have before you is a list of streets that will be treated, that were selected for pavement treatment for the 2021. And traditionally, the city, when we do pavement resurfacing, we just conduct traditional hot mix asphalt overlay resurfacing or microsurfacing, and we just put back the same existing pavement striping. And starting last year, like we did in Almond and Covington, we tried to look for opportunities to upgrade striping where possible. So what we have on the right side of my screen right here, everyone can see my screen, right?
Yeah.
The list and the map. What we have on the right side is the list of streets that were selected and their treatment type. And we're looking at this list and picking up some street that we may have potential striping upgrades. And the ones that are bolded, as you can see, Fremont Avenue, Campbell Avenue, Eastwood Avenue are some of the street that we're eyeing for potential striping improvement, just because we see more bicycle travel way, or if it's near a school or a higher speed or more vehicle travel. So these are some of the streets that we have in our preliminary study, and we will Jaime, correct me if I'm wrong, but we're going to bring these street back to the commission for the actual improvement plans, correct?
Yeah, so as Gautam was mentioning, so the list and then the associated map on the side can give you visuals of kind of where all of the resurfacing work is going to be happening. But there are a few corridors that are opportunities for us to do complete street implementation treatments like we did for Almond and Covington last year. And so the streets in bold, Fremont, Springer to Dolores, Campbell, Cuesta to Fremont, and Eastwood, Covington and Miramonte, we're going to do concept plan line drawings for just like the process that we did tonight for the first four of the CSMP project. So we'll hold meetings probably sometime starting in, if not February, definitely by March, so we can try and get consensus with residents on wider bike lanes, narrower vehicle lanes, maybe some buffers. You know, if it's a street that already has bike lanes like Fremont in that section, but a street like Eastwood or potentially St. Joseph, which we're looking at as an alternate. If we have enough money to do more, we'll do St. Joseph. Then those streets don't have any treatments on them for the portions north of the school of Montclair. So we'd have to do more robust community engagement to try and build consensus around what to do.
Okay. So what is the criteria by which we identify those streets?
These streets are actually, so every 2 years we get a citywide pavement survey and through a third-party consultant and with a grant through MTC. And as a deliverable from that work, we get a pavement report for the entire city. That this went to council, I think, last summer, and we had a PCI, overall PCI of 68, and that was when we brought to council about potentially increasing our payment program budget. And this is a list we also use that have recommended streets for the next 4 years, and we use that street to select and basically come up with our list for upcoming year.
Got it. And then can we, when you show us this list next time, please, can you sort of perhaps put a date or approximate date when those streets were last treated? I mean, on average, is it 5 years, 20 years, 25 years, 50 years? How long would it take before they see a retreatment?
Okay, we can try to put that.
Yeah, I don't want to put more work in your lap here. If it's too complicated, don't do it. But if it's easy to sort of see it, it'll be great to get a sense of what year it was last touched.
Okay.
Chair, if I may, it would also be helpful to know if any of the streets are on a Safe Routes to School map. So if there's any way to do an overlay and know that it is part of that would be very helpful.
Yes, I think this is the kind of discussion, we'll have when we dive into the criteria of the master plan. Sort of, I know that there's sort of a pavement index requirement here that sort of drives the work, but should there be other criteria also that would either reduce or elevate the priority of a street, for example, the safe route to school, increase in traffic, or what have you?
So just really, I want to make sure you Chair, only because you triggered me with your comment. The visioning process you're going to go through does not and will not include visioning or goal requirements for how the city selects its pavement program. If you want to do that, that is something completely outside of what we've talked about.
That's not, yeah, I agree with that. That's not what I intended. What I'm talking about is to have us think through the criteria and then drive that into ultimately what is it that we want the master plan to deliver at the end of the day. So we're not going to try to move down into specific streets and the criteria for each one street, but at a higher level understand what are we trying to promote. What are the criteria that we need to be measuring the various 19 projects that come in front of us? We need to make sure that when we look at those 19 projects and tie them back to the surface streeting here, are they connected? Are they disconnected? Or should they be connected? These are the things that we need to be thinking through.
Can I add a comment, if I may, Chair, about this?
Of course.
So just wanted to mention that we did look at the safe route to school and the traffic index when we selected these streets. which is why St. Joseph Avenue was added as an alternate. And for the base bid, there were some cul-de-sac streets that not many homeowners, I mean, only the homeowners within the cul-de-sacs used. And unfortunately, they didn't meet the budget criteria. So they were the first ones to be eliminated from the project list.
And that's how Campbell Avenue came on, correct, Kathy, for the portion along the school?
Yes, so originally only from the Fremont Avenue to the Rosita Avenue was part of this year's resurfacing project. But then it didn't make sense to just do one set. I mean, just leave out the one segment. So we added the Cuesta to Rosita within the project also.
Yeah, so I think for you, Chair, like what you're saying, we went through that process. Was we were selecting the streets, we focused on schools and linkage opportunities. But to your point, I think that just has to get documented somehow so that people know we went through that process.
Yeah. I mean, look, I'm sure there's a lot of stuff that you guys do is second nature to you. So we need to make sure that we get educated, that you share with us that thought process, so it helps us style the pieces together.
Understood.
Great. Any further comments?
I guess I just have a quick question. Jaime, is this just a partial list? Because I know that there are a lot of streets that I see resurfaced because there's some trenching being done to replace sewer pipes or gas pipes or underground utilities or whatever. And then within several months after that, the entire street is resurfaced. Would they show up on a list like this?
So this is only the list of streets that we would microsurface or do some kind of an overlay work for in the summer work. So this is the list. This is only the list. Next year's list may have some streets where there were utility work going on that like I have no idea about, but in general, that is one of the other factoring criteria that we look at is was a street damaged a year prior because half a mile of sewer line was put in. But this list is the full list.
It is. Okay, thank you.
And actually, interesting. So we've said that we want to target the PCI, to raise the PCI from 68 to 76. Was that right, Jim? What we sort of said as a target?
75 by 26.
Okay. So by end of 21, so when we've done these, whatever the number of streets here, 20, 15, 20 streets, what's the impact on the PCI? What does it go up to? 69, 70?
We'll find out because we do this study every 2 years. It's not exactly linear, and so it's hard to come up with a number.
Got it.
Yeah.
Close enough. I just want to sort of get a sense of when should we anticipate the next meaningful jump in the PCI if we continue at this pace?
I mean, in theory, we should see it gradually moving up every year, or at least seeing that in the report every 2 years. So this last report, it was, I think, lower than expected. But we also didn't put budget the money that was truly recommended. So it's part science and part art. How we do this.
Okay. All right. Stacy.
I have a couple things quickly. The first one is just for staff. Thank you for considering some of the school routes things. Just in general, when we consider school routes, let's remember to consider the elementary, the middle, and the high school. And sometimes if it's on a school border, there's multiple, because it's not always just the school that's nearby that's the route. The kids are going to, as they grow up, they go to all the schools. And then when we plan some of the, the improvements, I know some you have suggestions you have noted and things. We also have to think about the kids might be going in opposite directions. Like in elementary school, they might be headed this way in the morning, and middle school, they might be headed that way. So we just have to think about that as we plan the improvements. The next thing is just specifically on a couple of the segments that you have here. The Fremont Avenue segment, I think you have it going up to Dolores. And then what you have proposed as a segment in the master plan is the Loyola Corners Triangle. And then that just leaves this tiny little segment of Fremont between Dolores and, I can't remember if it was A Street or Fremont or whichever it is. that isn't accounted for as part of our improvements plan for bicycle pedestrians. And I think that should be accounted for somehow because we want to be continuous in the way we make our improvements. The next thing is for Lincoln University Avenue to Sherman. You just have that listed as a pavement project. And I have a question, and this is literally a question. That's the location where some churches are, and also where we recently saw an application for a preschool and after school program to be held in a church. And we got a lot of concerns from the neighborhoods there about the safety of the people walking to their cars and in and out of that. I don't know if there's any additional pedestrian striping and improvements we could do in that parking area on the street and the street. It's a question for you guys. And then the final one is on Eastwood Drive. When you're looking at paving here, this was the place where we have that sign, I think, where there's no turns on Eastwood Drive at certain times of day or something, that got raised as part of our block school thing. So I hope we can also look at striping and signing there so we can have that conversation about the signing. That's my points.
Okay. Thank you, Stacy. Any further comments before we move on to the next item? Okay. Jaime, was that Gaku? I guess where I don't see your picture here. Gaku, is that what you wanted from the commission?
Sorry, yes, yes, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You guys. Great job, Gaku.
Thank
Okay,
you.
before we move on, I see somebody from the public has their hand up.
Oh, okay. Yes. Sorry. It's getting late. John, go ahead, please.
Perhaps there was a hand from maybe a while ago.
Okay. If there's anyone from the public who wishes to speak on this item, please.
From a while ago.
Okay, very well. Can you please reset it, Gaku? Thank you. All right, so let's move to item number 8 then, quarterly update.
I don't have an update for you. We'll have to do that next month. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we've got a lot up there on our plate right now, so that's plenty sufficient. All right, monthly staff report.
So just a couple of quick items. So you're starting to see, in relation to the Complete Streets Master Plan, there was a bit of a lull in this fall, and I know that a lot of you did express a concern about that. Now we're on the flip side of that. Right now we're like full steam ahead, and so we are actively trying to respond to your concerns from the study session last week. We've already received a couple proposals from third-party facilitators to help come in and guide you in a discussion for that visioning process. So as soon as we can, we'll send out a doodle poll once we got the consultant on board and try and get that scheduled for you guys sometime, probably going to be around mid-February, so that you guys hopefully finish it by then and don't miss out on providing opportunities for the next batch of plan line drawings, which will come out in February as well. And in that sense, we did 3 groups of plan line drawings. I understand that's going to cause conflicts, real property interest conflicts for all of you. So we may find that over the next 2 months when we have these larger workshops, I really would encourage you all to still review those drawings and provide us comments on your own. But I just want to make sure everyone understands that there will be real property conflict interest as we're working on that project. But the other piece, more importantly, is just that please know that we're working on the visioning process for you.
Great, thank you, Jaime.
Yeah. A couple of other items. I did want to just very quickly address Quest to Drive. It came up a couple of times during the workshop. I know some of you guys were there. We're still starting to receive feedback from residents and non-residents that just travel to the city along Quest to Drive regarding the height and motorist experience of traveling over those new speed tables on Quest to Drive, El Monte and Springer. And for the people that are living there, they're pretty much loving it. They're really happy with the change and character and speed feel, at least from all the comments that I'm getting from people. But with that said, there's also a lot of concerns from the community. There was a couple of residents from Los Altos Hills who recently kind of started a next door chat. They had a lot of chatter that went up to the city council level. So what we're planning to do is what's always been planned, is that once the project's complete, which we are now complete, we were going to wait a few months to see how things pan out, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. So the plan was always to let this happen, and then in March we were going to do a new data collection process. I think we collected around 9 or 11 different data points all around that whole community: Paco, Benvenue, and Cuesta, Arboleda, and Campbell. We're going to do the same data collection again in March, which will let the project be in place for about 3 months, just so we can see what is the, even though the volumes may be different because we're in a COVID environment, at least from the standpoint of speed, is our project successful in seeing a permanent reduction in vehicle speeds, at least along the project corridors. So know that that'll come back to you sometime in the late or early spring, but that data collection process will happen in March, and we've been telling people likely going to come to the commission in April. The last item is we are in the construction phase of the El Monte Sidewalk project. That's the project that's connecting Almond Avenue to Clark Avenue. We talked a little bit about that earlier today in the community workshop. We're a little slow on the project. We're working out some issues with the contractor in the field for conflicts, but we are anticipating that project will likely begin to see a lot of construction activity in February. So by the time we report back to you in a month, we'll have a different update with a lot of work on the ground being active in the field. That's all that I had from the standpoint of active projects. Jim, did you want to really quickly add anything else on your side?
I think you've covered it. I did want to add a suggestion about this meeting. I know there's been concern about it going past 9 o'clock, and so I thought it might be good just to have a little exchange about how we manage that. Would you like to have that conversation quickly right now, Chair?
Yeah, absolutely. Go for it. You bet.
Okay. So, as you know, this is an issue at city council meetings, and kind of the previous mayor in the last several months started to put an end time on the meetings, such that there was an obligation to, if an item started at 11, that was the last item on the agenda to be presented, and the rest would get deferred. So I'm thinking, we could always do that here, where we have a hard stop at 9 o'clock, and anything that doesn't start after that gets deferred, in which case then we would have to prioritize our agenda, with the things that we need decisions on or we need to present on. So I want to just get your feedback on that.
Yeah, look, I'm all in favor actually of priorities. I think the agenda, we start with one agenda and somehow it always balloons. There's a lot of stuff to be done. So I'm going to punt that back into your court, Jim.
Okay.
And sort of you and Jaime come back and tell us ultimately where are the priorities on those items. Sometimes there are things that come into the last minute and take priority, like you got projects. The Lyle project, these things need to get done, so I don't think we can punt on those things. But there are things that you can perhaps, when you discuss internally before you bring it to discussion with me and the vice chair, and then sort of say, these are the priorities the way you see them, and I'm happy to follow that.
And we are trying to manage that. Just to add in also, like, you're going to see, I think you all have 5 more study sessions just around the master plan scheduled between now and the start of summer. So yeah, we're trying to manage this regular meeting by also having those study sessions so that we get other business done.
Yeah, I think ultimately, look, punting and putting a time limit, all it does is just simply makes the next meeting worse. And so you got to either trim the agenda, or, which is what we talked about, I think, in the previous meeting, we need to be more efficient. There's stuff that doesn't need to go, we don't have to go through it. We can read it offline. It is package that we can read. We don't have to have you or Jaime or Jeff Knowles repeat those, what we could have read independently. So we can go straight into a discussion point. And that would easily take 10, 15 minutes of presentation time.
I think for us though, Chair, just to respond to that is, part of the reason why we do that, it isn't so much for you, but for the people that do chime in from the community that don't read the staff packets, that is really helpful information. It sets and frames, it sets their discussion up when they provide comments. And because we heard a lot of comments tonight where we weren't outreach to people, after we've tried so hard to outreach to people, and going that a little extra step in the presentations from our perspective, I found is very helpful to make sure residents feel like they're really understanding and
Sure.
we're being as open as possible to them and
There's
transparent.
going to be a fine balance here. I'm gonna sort of encourage you to find that balance. And do you need to go through the whole presentation or do an executive brief of it, which is trimmed down to a fraction of it? I'll let you manage, but that's sort of another thought to sort of think about. Can we make the presentations faster, more compact, so we can jump into the discussion?
Okay.
Again, just a lot of, and I'm open to more ideas here. Cindy, please go ahead.
It's not an idea to fix it, but one thing is we probably need to revisit our calendar or work plan, because it is already jam-packed with stuff that we plan to do in the next few months. And then of course things are going to get added to that agenda. So we should probably revisit that and make sure that the things that we do put on the agenda are manageable within the time.
Yeah.
We only missed one item tonight, by the way. I'm really proud. We only missed one item, and that was the quarterly update. So we did pretty good.
Well, and I was to that last point, I was very stressed when I saw the work plan, because it was very loaded the first 6 months of the year, on top of what we have with the Complete Streets Master Plan. So, and then the back end of the year was pretty light. So if there's a way we could spread things out better.
And we should. I mean, that's a great point, Jim. I think we should. Nothing is set right now. We should, if we need to move things around, we should do that. I would rather have more productive discussions than just simply having to run through the agenda items. Okay.
And Chair, I think at one point you had instituted the 2 to 3 minute comment and question period on our fellow commissioners. I think that is a brilliant thing to do. We need to be more efficient and prepare our questions in advance so that we get through them efficiently.
And that's definitely something I'm willing to do. If that's what the commission would like me to sort of take the stick and then use it and be strict in terms of how much time everybody gets, I'm happy to do that.
Sometimes we need a TikTok.
Okay, so maybe next meeting, that's exactly what I'll do, folks. I will be a bit more strict on the time management.
And if I may chime in on that too, I think sometimes a combined question and answer period helps us be more efficient too, time efficient. Because if we go through a set of questions, then we come back and then we go through a set of comments, I think sometimes that takes a little longer, and sometimes our questions can be just comments, or sometimes if we have a question and we really just want a really quick answer and we get a long answer, and then we have a bunch of other stuff we want to put out too.
Okay, I'll be strict next time. I will be cutting you off and say your time is up. I will do so. Great. Commissioners' reports and comments.
None for me.
Nothing to report. We move on.
I have bullet points if anybody's interested from the VTAB pack.
Okay.
If you're interested. If you're not, you can
Just
take
a summary, just a highlight summary. 1 minute.
So number one, Caltrans District 4 is seeking input on their active transportation plan and their pedestrian plan. And they're also doing a bike highway study. I have URLs. If Gaku opens the chat, I can plunk them in there. Number two, there's going to be a new OBEG grant with federal funds, something like Safe and Seamless Quick Strike grant. It allows funds for bike and ped infrastructure, bike and ped quick build, education and encouragement programs, et cetera, et cetera. We should take advantage of this if we can, please. Next one, presented at the VTA BPAC was Measure B, bike and pedestrian proposed education and encouragement metrics. I can share the presentation with you, Jaime, if Alta wants it as well. And then the final one was the Silicon Valley Bicycle Coalition presented their survey data. And by the way, I was also elected the vice chair of the VTA BPAC, so I will be serving as the vice chair this year.
Okay, thank you. Any other commissioners' reports and comments? Good, that was efficient. I like it. It's a good start. future agenda items. We've got a long list of agenda items in front of us, so let's make sure that this is an important thing to add to the list, please.
Please don't add anything to the list.
None for me.
And not adding to the list, because I think we have stuff on there about VMT, but I just want to flag the issue of, number one is I'm kind of seeing some stuff on the tentative council calendar that's related to VMT, and I don't know if that's something that we're aware of, should be aware of, should be coming to us before. I don't really know.
Okay, it says point made, VMT.
Yeah,
right?
and the other point I have to make as well is if planning is leading VMT, the planning department,
Yes.
then I just want to send them the message, Jim, that they should remember it's a transportation related thing. And I personally think that that needs to come through CSC to have a review.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Stacy. I agree, VMT is important. Any other items? All right. 9:44 p.m. Thank you, folks. We adjourn.
All right, everyone. Thank you. Great meeting. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you.